Happy Hump Day! It's a Wednesday, everybody, and this is the Sean O'Connell Show. A day ahead of a college football semifinal matchup, Notre Dame, Penn State. We'll talk a little about that on the show today. The college football coaching carousel has slowed its turn, but the NFL coaching carousel is spinning faster and faster. We'll get into some of that discussion on the show as well. We've got a fun one lined up for you. At least I think it'll be a fun one. Scott Mitchell is going to stop by. We'll talk about some of that NFL storyline stuff. We're going to have Mike Yam on the show in our 1 o'clock hour. Looking forward to a conversation with Mike Yam, who, of course, now works for the NFL Network and has done some work on the ACC stuff. And we're just going to have a little bit of fun today. Who else we got? Belle Fraser going to join us on the show today. Is that right? It's a Utah Hockey Club game night.
Yes, Belle Fraser is a big game night, too. The defending champs are in town for the Panthers.
That'll be a fun one. That's James Peterson. He's producing today. We're going to get to all that stuff. I didn't expect this to be the topic of discussion today to open the show, but I had some conversations yesterday that were very, very fascinating and just kind of coincidental about the state of things in college football as we get very close to finishing the first year of an expanded college football playoff. And I guess this is the fourth year of the NIL transfer portal era. But it feels like, and maybe I'm alone in this, but it feels to me like this is kind of the first year where the dust has started to settle and we've gotten some idea of what those things actually mean for college football. And it's pretty wild. And, of course, I have these conversations with people through a Utah football lens. And while I'm not breaking any news here, so if that's what you're tuning in for, I'm sorry to let you down. I'm not breaking any news here. But as we have observed these past few weeks, Utah trying to retain the talent on its roster, trying to add important talents and offensive weapons especially to its roster in the transfer portal. And, of course, now you're going to have to fill in some depth pieces at important defensive positions like defensive tackle. They're trying to add talent everywhere. And as we've observed and read the articles and, farmed the rumor mill for what we think is good and bad, I've been as reactionary as anyone. And I have looked at a Keanu Tanuvasa departure and been like, oh, man, that is really, really unfortunate. Does this say anything bigger about where the program is at, et cetera, et cetera? And, we've had those discussions on the air. But after a couple of the talks I had yesterday, speaking with people that I know are all the way dialed in on this and speaking with people that I trust as much as you can trust really anyone in an industry, no one's trying to, deliberately mislead you, but information and the sources of information are sometimes dubious. Utah's done a hell of a job. I mean, we've been harsh in the evaluation of this past season and of what's going on with the coaching staff and, of course, with this roster flux. But Utah's done an unbelievable job. When you really put it in perspective, and some of these conversations did put it in perspective for me, there are guys, your favorite Ute, whoever that is that's still on the roster, and, of course, I'm eliminating the Cam Calhouns, I'm eliminating the Keanu Tanuvasas, I'm eliminating the guys who have sought greener pastures. Your favorite Ute, someone who's been productive on the field and has been offered, enough by Utah for them to post on their Twitter account or on their Instagram account, a Utah man am I, with some pictures, some highlights, some whatever. That guy, chances are, has been offered anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million to go somewhere else. And not just one time, if we're talking about the players that we all have on our minds. If you're talking about the Fanos and the Lomus and the Smith Snowdens and the Lander Bartons, these guys have been offered big money, not just by a school, not just by the rival down south. Like BYU is not the biggest threat to this. It's the most painful one when they have some success in luring talent away from you. Like, I hate to see Carson Ryan go. I hate to see Keanu Tanuvasa go. But they are not the ones. Those are not the wolves in the woods. They're not the sharks in the water that are circling this Utah football program with ludicrous offers and with insane sums of money. And they're not the ones that are, again, rattling the cage of a coaching staff that's consistency and long-tenured status makes it more difficult for them to adjust to this, right? Kyle Whittingham's long-standing tenure as the Utah football head coach, second longest in all of major college football, is an asset and a feather in the cap and a bonus and a good thing in nearly every other scenario. In this particular scenario, it is a challenge. It is an obstacle of sorts. And he's doing a really good job of making it not a significant obstacle for the program. But I promise you, it's harder for these guys to adjust, these older guys. And I don't just mean older in age. I mean older in how long they've been, like, entrenched in their positions in college football. It's harder for those guys to adjust to this than for the Dan Lannings of the world, who got the job 5 minutes ago. All right? So Coach Witt's doing a phenomenal job of peeling back his own thoughts, peeling back his own ego, peeling back his own worry about the direction that the game itself is taking, and saying, we know this is the rule set, this is the system, we're going to do it now. They're doing a pretty good job. And these couple of conversations I had yesterday made me feel a little bit more realistic about my own worry, my own criticism of the way things are going right now at the University of Utah. And I don't think I've been overly critical. I think I've been pretty optimistic on most fronts. I try to be a realist and know that, look, there is some heavy lifting to be done to get back to where Utah is regularly competing for conference championships in the Big 12, the same way they were just 2 seasons ago in the Pac-12 conference. But just a little sunshine through the clouds for me, James, that knowing that there are some heavy hitters that are coming with, like, big old checks and saying, Caleb Lomu, I want you on my starting offensive line. And you're going to be playing at an SEC school. You're going to be playing at a Big Ten school. You're going to be playing at a place that your parents and your uncles and your aunts and your grandparents and everyone around you is going to be like, you got an offer from who? And they're going to pay you how much? And for now, you're keeping that at bay. They're doing a pretty darn good job given the context of what you're actually up against in college football in 2024, 2025. I'm more impressed now than I was this time yesterday with the efforts that Utah has made to retain its roster and to add guys like Devin Dampier and some of the other talents that are coming in offensively.
Yeah, I think that there's still definitely reason for optimism. Now, is it enough optimism to say that they're going to be contending for a Big 12 title or among the handful of teams that are like this year? Maybe they were in the position that Colorado or even Kansas State were in at the end of this year. I'm not there yet, but there's reason for optimism that this could be a really nice turnaround year, because we've been saying it. We've been saying what you just said for a while. Yeah, they've lost some key pieces. Keanu Tanuvasa, the latest, right? But it also feels like they've added some guys who could be really key players, who were key players at other schools. High-level group of 5 players to pretty high-level Power 4 players. So it feels like there definitely is some reason for optimism. I want to ask you this, though, because I was listening to The Drive last week,
okay.
And Chris Kamrani was on with Spence.
Yes.
In studio. You probably heard this too, but they were a little more pessimistic about it. And one of the things that Spence brought up was he was looking back at BYU's independence era and how every year it felt like the the most hope that fan base could have was in the offseason, because they lose a game and all of a sudden they're not in playoff contention and they don't have a conference title to go for, and the air kind of gets let out of the balloon a little bit. So he asked Chris Kamrani if feels like that's where Utah is right now this offseason, and maybe Utah be there for the next couple of years, given just how flat, how much they fell from preseason expectations this past year. I wonder what you think about that, because I think they make good points that this right now it feels like, yeah, Utah's biggest hope for optimism right now is this offseason and who they can bring in, transfer portal and whatever, and then once the season starts, might be back to a little bit some disappointment, but we don't know that till the season actually starts.
Okay,
right?
You're right. It's a good question to pose, and it's an understandable question to pose given the context of what happened this last year and what happened 2 seasons ago now. If Utah can have a normal injury year, not a good luck injury year, not a I can't believe we made it through the season without a single starter going down type of year. I mean, the Fiesta Bowl year was as good of a luck year as you could have with injuries in probably the history of college football. Like, one projected starter was down, to my knowledge, and I was on that team, so I think I knew what I was watching there. Like, there was one guy that was unavailable for the year because of a weight room injury. One guy. Everybody else,
crazy.
Everybody else was pretty healthy throughout the year. Yes, the normal bumps and bruises. Yes, the occasional, hey, you're going to have to sit this game, but you'll be back next week. But I'm not even talking about a year like that, James. I'm talking about just a normal year where you lose a starter here, you lose a starter there, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse than that. Maybe some depth issues, whatever. Utah football is going to win games. Utah football is going to be knocking on the door for important things in a college football postseason, and certainly I think a Big 12 championship, because look at the rest of the Big 12. The rest of the Big 12, if you pay attention to the transfer portal tracker, and you sometimes have to back up. You have to take a higher altitude view of what's going on. BYU's done an immensely incredible job of capitalizing on the 11-win season they just finished, and they've added a bunch of talent. Right? When the spring transfer portal window opens again, some of those same guys that are at BYU right now are going to say, oh, I'm actually not a big part of the plans. You know what BYU has done, I think probably better than Utah has in this season, this offseason cycle, is they've added a bunch of bodies so that when spring ball comes, they have a lot of talent, and then they can shake it all up, and they can see who sticks. And they say, all right, Carson Ryan, thank you for coming here. The tight end role is actually not going to be any more of what it was at BYU last year. Are you going to make a decision to stay, or are you going to make a decision to move on again? He'll probably be like, I'm not going to transfer to my third school in 3 years. I'm going to stay, right? So now they have some talent there. They got a nice 2 deep at the tight end position. Gone are the days where we're talking about Utah's tight end room being 6 or 7 guys deep, which we were wrong about, by the way.
Yeah.
We were totally wrong about that, by the way. We were so intent on look at all the talent that this team has in the tight end room heading into this 2024-2025 season. And then, like, Caleb Lohner ended up being the most productive touchdown scorer from that room.
Yeah. Landon
King didn't do anything. Carson Ryan was a great blocker, but didn't really get involved in the pass-catching game. Dallin Bentley, Miki Sungutoraga, all these guys were just glorified blockers, right? So gone are the days when you and it doesn't matter if we're talking about Utah or BYU or Alabama or Oklahoma or whoever, gone are the days when you get to sit back and be like, I have 4 guys who could start on any given Saturday sitting in that position room. You don't have to do that as a player anymore. So players are not going to do it. With that in mind, the goal, the battle right now for Utah, for BYU, for Utah State, for Oregon for everyone right now is heading into your spring camp, heading into your winter conditioning period, your speed school, right? What you're doing right now is you're making sure that there's guys who might be good enough to start for you in the building. And then in spring, you're going to put the helmets on, you're going to put the pads on, you're going to actually have some live work. And at Utah, you've got like Spencer Fano has nothing to prove. Caleb Lomo has nothing to prove. Lander Barton has nothing to prove. Smith Snowden has nothing to prove. I think that's probably the end of the list.
Yeah, unfortunately, not many of the offensive skill players that are remaining on the roster you put in that list. There's going to be a lot to prove out of that group.
So it's going to be a real spring football camp at Utah, and it's going to be a real spring football camp in a lot of places because there's a lot of fresh bodies. And all of these coaching staffs are going to have this situation where like those 4, 5, 6 guys don't have to do a lot in spring, and we're going to let everyone else battle it out to be part of the depth chart. And if you can't, on the exit interview, if you can't promise a guy that he's a starter or a number 2, you might as well say, have fun in the transfer portal. Because even a number 2 is probably going to say, I might move on and find a place to start. But a third-string guy, unless he's a walk-on, which might be eliminated from college football, are likely to be eliminated from college football with the revenue-sharing model being instituted in just a couple of months, and roster sizes capped at 105, all scholarship players, no 120, 125 with, a couple dozen of those dudes being walk-ons. Like, there are very few people, even true freshmen, who are going to be like, I'm fine with being a third-string whatever. It just isn't going to be the case anymore. So when you actually look at what's happening for Utah, and I focus, of course, on the Utes because we're the home of the Utes. When you focus on what's happening with Utah with that in mind, Cam Calhoun was going to be a guy that you needed in the 2 deep. Keanu Taunuvasa was going to be a guy that you needed in the 2 deep. I still think that Carson Ryan was a guy that you needed in the 2 deep. And I'm looking at the transfer portal tracker for everyone else, and I'm like, I don't know if what you lost elsewhere was really something that you're going to miss. And that's not to insult anybody that decided to move on. I just am trying to be realistic about it. There were not a lot of guys like Jalen Glover. Samote Pepa. That's another one.
Yeah, that's another guy.
That's another one. Samote Pepa, you wanted to stay.
Yeah, I wanted him in the 2 deep. Yeah,
he was going to be a starting defense. He and Keanu Taunuvasa were going to be your starting interior defensive lineman this year, I think. Although Dallas Vakalahi would have given both of those guys a run for their money. Samote is not an every down type player necessarily because of his physical stature.
Maybe he started, but maybe he only plays 2 or 3 downs.
Yeah, his physical build, he is like a refrigerator, and so there's not a lot of downs. Like if a team is building a drive, he's not staying on the field for a 15-play opposing offensive drive, right? But I'm not trying to be an apologist. I promise you, I'm not trying to be a homer about it. I just had some good conversations with people in the know and people who are saying like, yeah, it sucks that you lost these couple of guys, but do you realize what you were able to keep despite this?
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, and that's the way that I've come out of it. I want to see how some of these new guys, particularly the guys from New Mexico and Group of 5 ranks, see how they play against Power 4 teams before I'm ready to say, yeah, I think they're going to be one of the handful of teams that competes for the Big 12 title. But I feel pretty good about them being a bowl team right now based on what we're just talking about, based on how they've had a few key players, but not too many key players leave. And they've brought in some pretty good talent to replace those guys. So I think there's definitely a reason for optimism if you're a Utes fan.
The depth proposition is certainly something that you want to, raise your eyebrow about. How much depth is this team really going to have, which was not something you had to worry about when you were building a roster, which was a 10-year project, by the way, in the Pac-12 when you finally built that roster of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Chase Hansen's been banged up and actually kind of hurt this year. Do we have it? Yeah, you did have something when you needed it, right? You did have something behind Chase Hansen. And that might be a question we're talking about through spring and into next summer. But I don't know. I didn't expect that this is going to be, where I wanted to start today because everything going on in the NFL and things like that. But it is front of mind for me because when I learned or when I guess reinforced what I thought was already happening, and Utah building a wall around guys, the most important guys on the roster, while the slings and arrows coming at that wall have $1 million pocketbooks attached, like that is something.
And tons of college football national championship tradition too. When you talk about the schools that are offering that kind of money, yeah.
And I know because he remained the head coach, you don't have to give Kyle Whittingham an extra pass or any kind of extra credit for adjusting to this because you better adjust to it if you're the head coach of a team in 2025. But just the idea of a guy like Kyle Whittingham sitting there and signing off on approving whatever the NIL deal is, whatever the offer is, when like, hey, we're going to give this guy who is, I don't know, a rising redshirt in our program or, he's a returning sophomore or he's some guy that we wanted to come from New Mexico who until 3 weeks ago, I was not super aware of this guy. In order to get him here, we're going to have to give him more money than I made in my first year as a head coach. Like, do you think that's easy?
No.
I learned.
It's got to be a knock to the ego.
I learned mostly through being a fighter and being in the PFL world and the UFC world. I learned very, very slowly, and I'm still not good at it, but very, very slowly, how not to count other people's money. How to try to go with the mindset that, like, whatever that person is making actually doesn't affect me. I just need to get my market value and not look at how much that person is making and say, well, I should be making that much, or how do I get to that much? Like, it's a difficult thing to do, I think, in every profession. It's especially difficult in sports where these numbers are a lot more public. And, again, that's something that you can't really keep secret in these locker rooms. So when a Tanu Vasa or a Calhoun or a whomever says, wait, you're getting how much? Well, I need to get this because I got offered this from so-and-so. So now I need to get this. Like, that's what these coaching staffs are dealing with now. And they're doing a much better job of dealing with it than I think we've given them credit for because of some of those big names that departed the program. The big names that remain it's like when the offensive lineman gives up the sack, then you learn his name. Yeah. You don't really know who he is when he's just doing his job. Everyone knows who the bad referees are, but nobody knows the names of the ones who don't make the controversial calls. It's kind of that situation right now with NIL and recruiting and what's going on. When you just like maintain as much status quo as you can, you don't get enough credit for it. And when somebody that your fan base thinks or the media that covers you thinks, hey, you can't lose that guy. When you do lose that guy, you get dragged. I am more of the opinion now than I was a day ago that Utah is doing as well as you can expect, given the context of this new environment in college football. Because you're not a secret anymore. The talent and the way that you've developed and your eye for what might eventually be an NFL player. Like, Utah has a great reputation. The coaching staff has a great reputation in college football now. So there are people out there that are just like, wow, Utah did not have a good season, but they like this player, and we kind of like this player, and the guy that we decided to offer instead of this player that went to Utah instead, well, the other guy didn't work out, so now let's go get the kid from Utah that we were thinking about before because now he's a little bit more developed, and we have more money than they do.
And to your point there, these opposing coaching staffs can go, we can trust their talent evaluation at Utah. We can trust Kyle Whittingham's eye and Morgan Scalley's eye for talent at Utah. And Andy Ludwig, before that.
There's only one position at the University of Utah that does not have a great reputation for development. It happens to be the most important position on a college football field, on a football field anywhere, but you're at less risk of having your quarterback poached, Utah, than you are your corners or your running backs,
just about,
or your whatever.
Just about any of the defensive positions.
Like,
yeah.
You're not even that. Like, even offensive line. The punter,
and O-line, yeah.
The punter got poached,
Which
I think that actually brings the list to 6.
Yeah.
6 guys you didn't want to lose.
Of course, we forget about the punter. Jack, we remember you.
Punters are people too, Jack. Anyway.
And we will miss you too, Jack. Don't worry about that.
I don't know how many teams in America, after missing a bowl game, kept all but 5 or 6 guys that they needed next year.
That you're like, we know that those guys are starters or the number 2 guy. Yeah.
Because of the environment in college football now, and because of what Ohio State and Oregon and Texas and Auburn and LSU and all these teams can do to your roster, I don't know how many teams, maybe we'll do a little research on this, we can go through and track their transfer portal and say, like, oh, that guy was a starter or that guy was a projected starter, and in a non-bowl game season, they lost. I mean, most teams are losing a dozen or more of these guys. Utah's doing better than you think. I'll get off my high horse now. We'll get back to the actual breaking news, the things at hand.
Don't come at us when they only win 7 games next year because we said this, okay? Come on.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Actually,
go ahead,
give us the smoke. Let's go.
I'm here for all that smoke because I absolutely am going to be standing on this broadcast desk being like, I told you everything was going to be all right when they win 10 games next year.
Ooh, tune into YouTube Live next November. This November, I guess, in about 11 months.
This camera that's right in front of me that's at about eye level, if I stand on this desk and I squat down a little bit, it'll be right at like hip gyration, booty shaking level. And that's exactly where it'll be if people are pushing back and saying, oh, they're not. I will be celebrating and gloating that I'm telling you that Utah, they're going to figure it out.
Tune in this November for some gyration.
Coming up in 11 months, I'm standing on this broadcast desk and just wiggling my jiggle.
Saying, I told you so.
All right. Antonio Pierce is out in Las Vegas. What does this mean for Coach Prime and for the Big 12? We'll get into that. There's lots to discuss on the Sean O'Connell Show. Don't go anywhere. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
Utah starts the movement. Collier. It's deflected by Daniels. Sexton for the tie. Oh! Hawks don't have a timeout. Trey from midcourt to win it. Yes! He hit it! Trey Young hits a three at the buzzer.
Trey Young!
Atlanta wins the game.
My. Whoa, Trey Young!
Can you believe that?
Gas up the plane, baby! We headed to Phoenix! Let's get out of here! Oh, my!
The buzzer beater, so demoralizing in basketball.
Especially half court after you seconds ago tied the game. That was rough. It would be even more rough if fans wanted the Jazz to win this season.
It would be a heartbreaker if you actually wanted to win these games. That sound courtesy of FanDuel Sports Network Southeast. Bob Rathbun on the call. Trey Young, half court buzzer beater. Good for you, Trey Young. The Hawks must have been listening to me talking yesterday about like, hey,
oh yeah, bulletin board material.
You want to talk about surprise failures in NBA basketball? Why are the Atlanta Hawks not a perpetual contender? I'm sure they tuned in to the home of the Utes, ESPN 700.
I was watching the video. I'm not much of a lip reader, but I think I said, "Take that, Sean." I think I saw Trey Young saying, "Take that, Sean O'Connell." I think I saw that.
I wish that were true. I would love that so much. If he like went up to a camera and he's tugging the jersey and he's just like, "Take that, OC. You don't know what you're talking about."
I didn't know you before I was listening yesterday, but take it.
I would have loved that. You know what? With AI, we could probably make a highlight that looks like that. Okay? So sign up for one of those AI things and let's start putting it together. Want to remind all of you before I get into what this Deion Sanders Raiders flirtation might mean for the NFL and for the Big 12 Conference. I want to remind everybody, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM has a cash kickoff going on right now. Time for your shot to win $1,000 in cash to pay your bills. Text MONEY to 508-777-1000. 508-777-1000. Text MONEY, MONEY, 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. This is a nationwide contest. All right. So the Denver Broncos made the NFL playoffs for the first time in a decade. The lowly Las Vegas Raiders have decided to move on from their head coach, Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. They did not make the playoffs this year.
I don't believe so, James. I don't believe they made it. And Antonio Pierce, by the way, Antonio Pierce was one of those guys. He not quite a Cliff Kingsbury situation, but he's one of those guys who kind of like stumbled upwards, which is really hard to do in college football or the NFL. He was part of that scandal going on with recruiting violations at Arizona State and removed from Herm Edwards' staff before Herm himself was removed from the staff. And then, of course, he ended up on NFL coaching staffs and ended up as a head coach. So you break rules in college, you get fired from college, and you end up as an NFL head coach. It's the Pete Carroll plan is what it was for Antonio Pierce. Or the Cliff Kingsbury plan, if you want to call it that. But Antonio Pierce, that experiment is over, and this is not a Raiders roster devoid of talent. They've got some bright spots. They've got some interesting things going on, and they've got, unfortunately for them, in their meaningless overachievement, they won 4 games this year, so now they have the number 6 pick in the NFL draft. How serious do you think the talks with Coach Prime and his group will be between Prime and the Raiders?
I think they'll be fairly serious. Yeah. I've heard Vrabel's name linked to that job because of Brady's involvement.
Vrabel's name, by the way,
he's linked to every job.
He's going to be linked to every open job. Like Westminster College has a football program that they're starting. Mike Vrabel. Like we're in that time of year where everybody wants to draw
Utah
a reason.
State hadn't just hired Bronco Mendenhall, we really like Mike Vrabel.
Will we see Mike Vrabel to Utah State? Like he's a respected coach. He's going to have opportunities. There's really only one college opportunity that I think would make sense for him, but these NFL jobs all make sense because there's only 32 of them, and they're some of the best jobs in the world, and you don't have to do any recruiting.
And he's proven that he's a good NFL coach already. So, but yet the Raiders one seems to be Raiders and Pats because of the links to the Patriots in both those organizations right now seem to be more realistic than any of the other jobs that Vrabel is linked to, which is, like we just said, all of the jobs, because Brady's now a part owner of the Raiders, and obviously they're great friends, played together for most of Vrabel's career, and then the Patriots because he's a Patriot, right? But I feel like besides Vrabel, I'm not sure what other options the Bears or the Raiders, would be seriously in on besides Coach Prime and Deion Sanders.
I mean, you could see them poach Bill Belichick away from North Carolina, where he just took a job.
Again, the Pats ties, the Brady thing.
Tom Brady is expected to be, reports are saying that Tom Brady, who's now a approved minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, is supposed to be involved in the coaching search. I wonder how good Tom is at evaluating coaching talent, because he got to a point in his career where he was the coaching talent, right? Where he was just like, we learned that. The chicken or the egg argument about whether it was Brady or Belichick, it was Brady. That, no disrespect to Bill, but it was more Brady than it was Bill. So I wonder how good Tom Brady is at selecting a head coach for a different organization than his own. Or one that he's playing for, I should say. The Coach Prime thing fascinates me because I put a poll up at Real OC Sports. Do you want to see Coach Prime go to the NFL, or do you want to see him stay in college football? And presumably, if he's staying in college football, he would be at CU. And I'm not wholly surprised by the results of this poll, but most people want to see him go to the NFL. Colorado is so much more interesting, and the Big 12 Conference is so much more interesting when Deion Sanders is the head coach in Boulder, that I don't want to see him go to the NFL.
I'm with you. I'd rather him stay in college, because NFL is always the most relevant thing, no matter who's the head coach. So I would rather have especially one of the lesser of the Power Four conferences that we care about around here, because we got two teams in the Metro in it. I would rather that guy stay, the really exciting head coach, stay in that conference. Now,
I have multiple reasons for wanting this.
Yeah. I'm not sorry, I was going to say I'm not blind to the amount of animosity that people have towards him because of the hype that didn't amount to much until this season, but I don't think that's enough of a reason to say get away from me.
There's absolutely no real reason for people to it's more interesting, I guess, if you think you want Colorado to be bad, so it's a guaranteed victory on the schedule for BYU and Utah in conference play. Sure. But it's just a lot more fun to talk Big 12 football when there's a dynamic personality like that, when there's someone who does the things he does, which are open for praise or for criticism at all times. They're relevant at all times. I want him to stay at the University of Colorado. I'm especially fascinated by the idea of what he can do there when he doesn't have Shedeur and he doesn't have Travis Hunter. He's done a good job recruiting, but was it important for him, or was it extra important for him to have a guy who's projected to be, a top 5 pick in the upcoming NFL draft, and his own son, Shedeur Sanders? I also want to see him stay in college football because of the bromance, the fledgling bromance that Deion feels at least towards Kalani. I don't know if the feeling is mutual yet. I want to watch this kind of like a season of The Bachelor. I want to know if Kalani has the same kind of love for Deion that Deion has for Kalani. We only get to find that out if they're in the same conference and at Big 12 Media Days together next year and such. And the other thing about it is college football is becoming more and more like college basketball in that it's hard to become attached to players. So in college basketball, what have we done for decades? You get attached to the college coach. The coaches are the things in college basketball that define the program. And that has been true for a long time in college football as well, but it's becoming even more true. And that's not true in the NFL. It's incredibly rare in the NFL for a team to be defined by its coach or for the coach to be the most interesting personality or the must-see television on an NFL team. The NFL is a player-driven league, and college football is a coach-driven league. And because of that, Deion Sanders in college football, again, a lot more interesting. Now, are the Raiders more interesting if Coach Prime goes there? Are the Giants more interesting if Coach Prime goes there? Yes, especially if he somehow finagles a way to get his son onto the same team. And that's actually, I think, the biggest obstacle for the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know how they make that happen. Because
they're going to probably have to trade up.
They'd have to trade up, and they sit at number 6 right now. And the leverage you have when everybody knows exactly who you're trying to go get is minimal.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Florio did tell Dan Patrick today on the Dan Patrick Show, 7 to 11 daily here on ESPN 700. He did say that he could see – no sourcing on this, but just his own intuition. He could see the Titans saying, we still like what we have in Will Levis. We want to develop him some more, and trading back that number 1 pick and trying to get a team like the Raiders on their hook to give them a few first-round picks in exchange. So he says that feels more likely than not.
But they would I don't disagree with that assertion. But they would have they being the Raiders would have no leverage and would have to overpay for that. If they commit and say we're hiring Deion Sanders, then everybody knows exactly what their plan is. Yeah. Trade up as high as you can, and maybe the Titans are there. But the Titans get to say, we were going to give this pick to whoever else for 2 future first rounds, 2 future first rounders, or 3 future first rounders for you, because in order for your scenario to work out the way you want it to, you have to get here and you have to get Shedeur because his dad only wants this job badly. If you get Shedeur Sanders, I know now that I can get more draft capital from you because you're my trade partner here.
We actually want 6 first-round picks from you. And the other thing of that with the Raiders is just quick look at the draft order. Cleveland's probably going to want a quarterback right now. The Giants certainly want a quarterback right now. There's 2 teams ahead of them that certainly would draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward number 1 overall if they could.
We will see how it plays out. The draft process also features this very contentious evaluation period that Shedeur Sanders has to survive in the eyes of every other NFL franchise. I think he's going to, but is he going to be the consensus number 1 guy? I don't think so.
No, I
don't
mentioned
think so
Cam Ward because I think that it's going to be pretty split between he and Shedeur for sure.
I'll tell you what, I don't think it's going to be that split at all because I think that there's a lot of similarities in the way that they pass the football and the numbers associated with passing the football. But I've watched both of these guys run with a football in their hands, and if all other things are equal, I don't know why it's like this. I don't know if he had I don't know if he got attacked by a dog when he was a kid or something. Shedeur Sanders has a hitch in his giddy up. He has a weird way of running.
Very awkward running style.
He runs so strangely, and it's so insane because his dad obviously ran like a gazelle.
Yeah.
So when you watch Shedeur run, that's not the problem with Cam Ward, right?
No.
So I know that when you're talking about pocket passers, their 40 time is not going to be the biggest thing here. But if all of the things are equal, you're going to see Shedeur Sanders go out there, and he's going to run like he runs, and everyone's going to cut on the film and be like, all right, well, these guys have very similar arms, but what is wrong with that guy? He runs like my uncle does.
You're telling – and – you can't convince me that that there won't be some scouts who look at everything and make an opinion based on their future abilities and future durability based on the smallest things. You can't convince me that there's not going to be enough scouts that say, "Yeah, I'm worried about injury because of his running style." versus Cam Ward. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's completely ridiculous.
In any case, I'm fascinated by how this all plays out. I don't think that the Raiders should be the only NFL franchise interested in interviewing Deion Sanders. I actually think Chicago should hire him because you want to talk about someone that could handle the complicated personality that is Caleb Williams. I don't think that there's a coach out there who will do a better job of it than Deion Sanders. Now,
in a big market like Chicago, having to deal with that too, Deion Sanders would be perfect.
Deion is actually,
in theory,
he's the right guy for a big market NFL team because that dude his ego is bulletproof. You cannot hurt him by criticizing him. He can go to New York and everyone can what on him every single week, and he's just like, okay, I'm fine. He'll give you a scripture quote, and he'll flash his pearly whites, and he'll say something funny, and he'll just be like, see you guys later. Like, you cannot bring Deion Sanders down.
I mean, he might say to a few reporters that what they're writing is bull junk, but besides that, he's not gonna take things too personally.
I want to hear New Yorkers react to him saying "dern" instead of "darn" or "damn"
and bull junk.
Dern.
For example,
I love when he says "dern." I want to see that in New York. I actually.
The Jets is one that I'm kind of hoping happens.
I would love to see him with the Jets because if anyone can destroy the self-image of a human being, even one as intact and bulletproof as Deion Sanders, it's the New York Jets.
Yeah.
I want to see that. I just want to see if the Jets and their horrific fan base can bring down the self-love that Deion Sanders has for Deion Sanders.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Jets are absolutely the franchise that would say, you want 6 first-round picks for the number 1 overall pick so we can get Shedeur here? Okay, here's 6 first-round picks. I don't know that there's any other franchise, maybe the Browns, that would acquiesce to whatever the Titans might ask for, to whatever team might hire Deion Sanders.
I go vote on the poll at Real OC Sports. Do you want to see Coach Prime stay in college football or go to the NFL? The Raiders opening is one that I think makes a lot of sense for him. Shedeur has expressed interest in playing in Las Vegas, living in Las Vegas. Deion, I think, would be just fine there. I want to see him stay in college football. It's more interesting in the Big 12 when Coach Prime is wearing a cowboy hat on the sideline. Sean O'Connell Show today and every day brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Les Schwab has the tires, the wheels, and the accessories for whatever it is that you drive. Stop by the local Les Schwab today. Tell the professionals there, hey, I need this job done right the first time. They will oblige because that's what they do. Hot Lunch is coming up next on the Sean O'Connell Show. Do you like alternative versions of your favorite sports? Do you like indoor football? Do you like flag football? Do you like 3-on-3 basketball? There's a new golf league on the block. We'll talk about that on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. The Hot Lunch coming at you. A question for everyone out there. I put a poll question up specific to a new television product courtesy of Tiger Woods and his partners on I'm sure everyone else knew about this. I stay pretty outside of the golf world, but the TGL, Golf League. Are you familiar with this?
I've been seeing it on ESPN. Yeah, Matt Berry hosting TGL on ESPN.
I'm a Matt Berry guy. I like Matt Berry.
Yeah.
Are you interested? 3-on-3 indoor golf, basically hitting into a gigantic simulator. It's a video game, but played by the best golfers in the world. And a little trash talk, a little back and forth, right? And they have the different surfaces you get to hit off of. If you put yourself in the bunker, they got a little sand bunker there that you have to hit the ball off of into the screen. It's fascinating. I've never hit into a golf simulator in my life. I don't know how alike the real game that is, how different it actually is. They had at least one hole with hot lava.
That's kind of fun.
Right? Like a little Mario Kart action going on here. I actually went to the website and I looked. They've got a bunch of really cool, like awesome designed holes. Some of them are meant to be photorealistic and look exactly like actual holes at actual courses. Some of them have been created exclusively for the play in this league.
The lava one is an actual hole.
It's an actual hole. Yes, it's actually incredibly dangerous for golfers to play at. And you can't just
You've never heard of that hole at Augusta before?
Yeah. Yes, Augusta hole number 21 has real lava at it. And you're not allowed to just take a drop or a stroke penalty. You actually have to go into the lava to retrieve your ball if you hit it there. No, I don't know. It's like, it feels like this is golf saying, and Tiger Woods saying, we've maxed out, at least on some level, what we're going to get from like the golf fan, like the person who already loves and just dreams about going to Augusta National and is already, excited about Sunday Red and is just pumped up to know that there's going to be PGA Championship golf or even live golf being played at these beautiful courses around the world. We need to give an alternative product for, if I'm being honest, the Sean O'Connells of the world.
So you're into it.
Well, I'm more into this than I am into
the regular golf,
to sitting and watching like real golf, which is crazy. I know, but you're gamifying golf in a way that makes it more snackable, I think. And for me,
great word choice.
That's just what it is. Like for me, that's more appealing. Golf has missed me for the most part. I've tried a couple of times to get into it. I don't have the patience. I don't have the talent. I don't have the money to be excited about golf. This is Top Golf meets Super Nintendo. I'm into it. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't watched a whole lot of it. It's really just been, it seems like sometimes it's on in the middle of the day here. That's why I've seen it on ESPN a little bit. I was a little confused before watching it. Why the TGL? I thought it was Top Golf League. I thought that's what that must be Top Golf. And then I'm watching it a little bit like, that's not Top Golf. So, I mean, Tiger's the T, no doubt. But anyway, I was a little confused by the name at first. But, yeah, it's fun. I'm also, like you, not a huge golf guy. I will tune into majors, but I'm not watching all 4 rounds. I'm watching mostly if it's a close race on Sunday, So, and lately, if Tony Finau is in contention. So yeah, I'm probably a little bit more into it than like regular PGA events or any of the live events that aren't majors, but still not crazy into it.
What about alternative versions of the other sports that you do love?
And you're talking about watching, right? Not playing.
Yeah, because playing, like 3-on-3 basketball is a blast to play. And mini golf is a blast to play. I'm talking about watching, buying tickets, maybe getting into the teams, whatever. Yeah. Like, everyone has tried these things. Indoor football was a massive investment for a huge amount of people. And shockingly enough, is still being played today in the United States of America. Shout out Arizona Rattlers, I think, won the last championship. I mean, like, we've all dabbled in it, but
I'm not that into it. I maybe watched a few seconds of 3-on-3 basketball at the Olympics this summer.
What are you talking about? You were wearing your Jimmer Fredette jersey every single day. It started to
you're
smell
right.
weird.
I'm sorry.
Started to smell weird.
You're right. I shouldn't be ashamed of that. I shouldn't be ashamed. I watched every second of 3-on-3 basketball. No, I really didn't watch much the 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics. I'm not that into that alternative stuff, alternative modified versions of regular sports that I like. Flag football that's going to be at the Olympics, I'll probably tune into the first couple of games just to see what it's like, but I don't know if I'm going to be that into that.
I'll tell you what's going to happen, all right? People are going to tune into flag football because it's football, and then there's a couple of those guys who think that they're like NFL caliber players, and they talk that way, and it's going to be insufferable, and people are just going to be like, no, I can't watch it.
Well, there are a few players, NFL players, that are going to play, right? Or have said they want to play, right?
I don't think any of them is actually going to play. I mean, would it be more interesting if, like, DK Metcalf was out there?
I thought I heard Joe, maybe this was just people wishing this would happen, but I thought I heard Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were interested in playing together for Team USA.
Please, yes. Please. Although, can you imagine being the delegation from, like, Taiwan and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and whoever else go running out there? You're like, oh.
The Algerian national team against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Oh, no.
Yeah. Okay, so
What about you? Are you into watching the modified versions? Did you tune into the 3-on-3 Olympics?
I try to be because I consider myself a general sports fan. Like, I give everything a shot. And there's a reason why, NFL football has been around for as long as it has, and NBA basketball and Major League Baseball. There's a reason why they kind of stand alone, right? Aside from the Savannah Bananas, nobody's been able to give us an alternative version of baseball that we really enjoy.
It's true.
At least not consistently.
And you could say the same thing for Globetrotters in basketball, but that's not nearly as good as it used to be.
Did you know yesterday was the anniversary? I learned this on the Dan Patrick Show. Yesterday was the anniversary of Globetrotter inception.
Yeah, I think Paulie brought that up and said, I had no idea.
It was
That's
like the
pretty
1920s or something, which is crazy. Anyway. All right.
Shout out to the Globetrotters.
So TGL, by the way, 57% of people voting right now at Real OC Sports are interested.
Yeah, there was the one comment though that said, never will be interested or something on Twitter. I love that comment.
I've never heard of a worse idea.
Yeah, never heard of a worse idea.
From our guy, Jimmy Rex.
I love that.
All right, Jimmy. All right.
Call in, Jimmy, and expound on that if you want. 877-353-0700.
All right, we'll get to some Scott Mitchell discussion next. The Utah football and NFL legend joins us in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
we'll see if the Vikings actually run a play as they take over at the 23-yard line. So the Lions were just about a half a yard short of being able to run out the clock, and the Vikings are just going to take a knee. Sam Darnold lines up under center. Darnold will drop down to a knee, and that's it. The Detroit Lions have won the NFC North. They are the top seed in the NFC playoffs for the first time in Lions history. A dominating win for the Lions to close the regular season. Detroit 31, Minnesota 9.
That's the final call on Lions' Week 18 win over the Vikings. That was Sunday Night Football, courtesy of Westwood One. Ryan Radke on the call. As he said, Lions, the number one seed in the NFC. NFL playoffs begin this weekend, and we are your exclusive home in Salt Lake City and beyond of NFL playoff football on the radio and Super Bowl 59 as well. Scott Mitchell, NFL veteran, Utah football legend, joins us now. Belle Fraser joins us in 20 minutes to talk a little Utah Hockey Club. It's a big noon hour for us. Scott Mitchell, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Am I coming in clear? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great. Yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. I'm on the speakerphone today.
Oh, all right. I like that. I asked this question earlier and got James's answer and some of the interaction from people online, but wanted your thoughts. The Raiders head coaching job is open, and there was some innuendo and discussion before the college football season was even over, before the NFL season was even over, that this might be one of those jobs that would make sense for Deion Sanders. He has a relationship with Mark Davis. They know each other. Tom Brady is a minority owner now. He also knows Deion very well. And, of course, the Raiders are in need of a quarterback, which makes it more intriguing if they would find a way to move up to grab Shador potentially. I just asked a simple question, though. Would you, as a college football fan, as a Big 12 football fan, would you rather see Coach Prime move to the NFL or stay in college football? Before I get your thoughts on what you think is more likely, what would you rather see, Scott Mitchell?
Oh, boy. I would love to see Deion somewhere that's a train wreck. And there are really two train wrecks, I think, in the football world, in college and the pros. One is absolutely the Raiders, and number two is the Dallas Cowboys. These are programs that have crazy fan bases, like immensely popular, and both these teams have not done anything forever. And Deion is such a lightning rod. I mean he draws just unbelievable attention to wherever he is, and sometimes it may feel a little bit of hype, but there's a lot of substance with Deion, and I think that's what I always like about him is if you look behind the gold chains and the entourage and the pomp and circumstance, there's some meat on the bones. There's something there, and I love the duality of that. You know that it's like, oh man, you're gonna watch a train wreck that you actually kind of maybe start rooting for, kind of thing. And the Raiders, oh man, and in Las Vegas too, because Deion is actually a very principled. He's actually a very moral. He's actually a very religious person. So it'd be kind of fun to see where he fits in that world. But Dallas is, and with Jerry Jones, my goodness, that's must-see TV. And it's stuff you tune into. And clearly, Deion has shown that, he got a lot of people interested in Colorado, watching them play Colorado State. I mean, who does that, right? And the viewing that he got in college football with a program that didn't win the conference, didn't go to the playoffs, didn't do anything. It's remarkable what he brings to it. So yeah, either one of those places. I will tell you, though, and I'm really glad that I've started to hear this about Shador. He would be someone that I'd be reluctant if I'm a GM, if I'm a team that I would take. And I think with Shador, there's more of the hype than there is the substance. And I'm not totally convinced of him as a player. And I've been hearing a lot of reports that there are teams that don't necessarily give him a first-round grade. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. If I'm starting a franchise, if I need a guy to really turn things around, I don't know that he's necessarily the guy that I want to do it with. But if you find the right guy and you look at like Bo Nix in Denver, that's a team that's like, if anyone should win Coach of the Year and Organization of the Year, it should be the Denver Broncos, with his deep in cap jail that they're in, to find a quarterback that's a rookie, that's cheap, to perform at the level he has, the whole team playing at the level they are. That's a big win right there for the Broncos. But they were wise in picking the quarterback, because I've said it, and I said it when Bo Nix was at Oregon, that I thought he was the best, and I thought he was the best one in the draft, and he was a guy I think you could really build around. I was just extremely impressed with him, how he played, how he handled himself. So I could see Deion going, but I would hate to have it a package deal with Shedeur.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because I think, for Deion, he doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to be coaching. Obviously, it's something that really drives him, and I think he wants to do it. And I think he'll stay at Colorado if he doesn't have an opportunity in the NFL. But if he's going to make that leap, do you think that it's only if, hey, I want to coach my own son, I want Shedeur to be on my team? If you're going to hire me, Raiders or Jets or Bears or Cowboys or whoever, I also want you to go and get my son so I can coach him and I can continue this ride we've been on together. Because that changes the calculus, I think, pretty significantly for me.
If you hear Deion's talk, and you hear, because he it's out there, right? I mean, they social media every one of his team talks and messages. It's all about motivational. It's all about pushing these players to be better, to do their best. And so if Deion's really about, I'm in this because I want to make a difference in young men's lives, and he says that, and I believe there's a lot of him that really believes that. Then I think he stays at Colorado. And I think he believes that he can have a bigger impact at Colorado and maybe move somewhere else, at some point. But I think his intention of being a coach is not to get on the coaching carousel and find the best job and do all that. I think, right? I mean, that's what he kind of espouses. But there's also the ego part of Deion that says, look, I'm in this coaching, and I want to prove to everyone that I can be the best coach in the world, and I can go anywhere, and I can have success. And I think every former player thinks they can be an amazing coach, and myself included. Right? I'm not. I don't think it's. Everyone goes, boy, if I was the coach, this is how I would do it. And so I think he kind of rides two different philosophies. The ego part of it, that he's that would send him to a place like the Raiders, but also his kind of inner conscience and soul that says, yeah, I'm really doing this because I have a platform. I've been very successful in my life, and I want to transfer that success to other people and help them kind of build and climb their own mountain. And I think he kind of feels that way with his kids. He's like, you need to be you, and you need to go do your own thing. And because, as a dad, man, it'd be really cool to coach my son wherever and whenever and however long I could, and it could be very appealing, but maybe that's not the whole reason why Deion is into this coaching thing.
Scott Mitchell is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, part of our Big 12 at noon coverage, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com. Yeah. When you talk about former players all thinking they can be great coaches, I don't know how much Coastal Carolina you watched recently, but they had a quarterback, Grayson McCall, who was a great player for that school, and his season ended early due to medical retirement. He got too many concussions. He shut it down, and now he's back immediately after being a player. I mean, his eligibility isn't even all the way out yet, I don't think, but he's decided he's going to join the coaching staff as a graduate assistant. And there's been some speculation that this might be in the future for somebody like Cam Rising at the University of Utah. I have no insight. I haven't talked to anyone up there on the Hill about that, but it is a role that I could see him someday filling either at Utah or elsewhere. Is that something you think we might see even coming up here in 2025 for a guy who technically could come back and play another year?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear Cam's not going to come back and play. I don't think that's in the cards at all. And the reality is when you play, like, it's the coolest thing in the world, Sean. Like, you played, and you know how it is to get on the field and do all that stuff. And when you play at a high level, and and whether it's in college or even in the NFL, there's nothing that replaces that, right? It's the most amazing natural high you could ever imagine for yourself. Having 80,000 people watching, and it's a cool thing. And going out and playing against these really good players and succeeding and beating them. I mean, that's and there's nothing. There's just nothing. I've never climbed Mount Everest. I don't know if that's the same high. I don't think I'd ever want to do that. But coaching, and I have coached. I coached high school in Utah here at my alma mater, and I did it as part of, hey, I wanted to give back to the community that had given me so much, and the coaching is awesome. It's kind of that next level. There's something really cool about going and teaching people and then watching them succeed at it. There's a lot of satisfaction in that, and I debated if I wanted to do that when I retired. It was more about my kids and spending time with them, and I just knew the time commitment. But when you're done, I think everyone or most people look at, I might consider that. Brian Johnson, when he finished at Utah, he got into coaching, and it's turned out to be a really good thing for him. And so I can see the draw and I can see the appeal, and some guys are good at it. Jim Harbaugh, really good at it, and other players not so much. So being a coach isn't just great if you're a former player. You still have to have that ability to communicate and to organize and to structure things and to lead people. Like, I know Dan Marino, he talked about, he goes, I'd never be a good coach. He goes, I'd be a good general manager, but I would not be a good coach because I couldn't teach people to do what I did because I was just too good. And so, which is another impressive thing about Deion, because he was a really, really good player, maybe one of the top 5 of all time, and he's turned out to be a pretty darn good coach too.
I was actually skeptical that Deion would be such a great coach back when he took over the Jackson State program because of exactly that. I've been around these guys. I think we all have, that were so incredibly talented and so gifted, and they just had the instinct. The game just made sense to their brains, and their bodies were capable of doing all the stuff you needed to do. I mean, I've been around guys, and I'm sure you have too, that were just like, well, just run faster, like just jump higher, just throw the ball further, and then you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it's like, sorry, I'm a mere mortal, I can't do that. But it really is incredibly impressive when it translates not only in your own mind, but you can teach that to other people. And I think a big part of Deion's success also is what you were talking about earlier about, how he's a principled guy. He's got deep conviction, and he can pass that on to people. I think being a teacher is a hell of a thing, and he is a good teacher.
One of the things that as a player that I appreciated in coaches and I despised if they didn't have it was authenticity. Like Coach Shula was authentic, and you didn't like to be the person of his, that he was pointing things out, because he said it in a very abrupt way, usually with a lot of swear words, and the tone of his voice was really loud. But I appreciated it because it came from a place of authenticity. And then I had other coaches that were into the head games, and they were kind of messy, and so whoever you are, I think authenticity goes a long way with the respect and getting something out of your players. You look at some of these 1-year coaches, and even Urban, when he went to the Jaguars, and was only there for a year, and I really wonder if he came across in an authentic way with these players, or if his style or his demeanor was something that came across as not with a lot of credibility behind it. And I'm not saying Urban's uncredible, but there's certainly this to really go to bat for a coach is to know that he has your back and that he's honest, and whether he's gruff or rough or whether he's loving and kind, as long as it's authentic, I think people respond to that the best way, at least in the long term. Because Jared Mayo, it was Gerard Mayo, sorry. He was he barely made it through 1 year, and the guys in the locker room talked about, man, he lost us. He lost us in December, and a lot of them said because you felt like he didn't really know where he was going with the team. He didn't know, he didn't have this plan or this vision, and he was kind of making it up as he went along. And as a player, you smell that out quickly, and you go, yeah, I'm not going to go, die on a sword for this guy if he has no clue what he's doing.
I was going to ask you about the leash. I get really mad when college programs don't have any sort of patience for a head coaching hire, and then they pay a ridiculous buyout and they move on to the next thing, and they're constantly shifting the sand underneath the players' feet. In the NFL, I never played at that level. I was never in a locker room at that level, and obviously you spent a lot of time. Okay, so the Mayo thing, 1 year was enough. You alluded to Urban Meyer and that experiment in Jacksonville. Antonio Pierce had a couple of seasons in Las Vegas before they moved on from him. How long should the leash be for an NFL franchise? I know you got to accelerate the timeline because of all the money, because players know a heck of a lot more about what should be happening. But what's a reasonable leash for a head coach to have to prove himself at the NFL level?
I think a lot of it depends on the team that he inherits. I think Bill Belichick is a great example of giving a guy a leash, right? He was really good as a coordinator with the Giants. Probably the biggest impact of them winning those two Super Bowls in '86 and '90, bigger than maybe Parcells, because Belichick was really good. But then he goes to Cleveland, and by the way, one of his assistant coaches is Nick Saban, right? So you have Bill Belichick and Nick Saban coaching the Cleveland Browns, and they were horrible. Like, they were not good. And he kind of lost the room, and he lost the team. But what he gained, because he talks about it, and he said, I gained so much as a coach, so much experience that was invaluable. I matured as a person and as a coach. And so the next job I had, I was so much more prepared for it. Pete Carroll is another example, as far as coaches. He wasn't very good in New England. Then he goes to USC, and a lot of people were like, what the heck are you doing hiring Pete Carroll? And he comes in and he understands the culture of what needs to happen for that program to work, and he's successful. He goes to Seattle, and he has the same success, but early on, maybe not so much. And I think the same you could say with players. Look at Sam Darnold today, where he was a bomb in New York, and then he goes to Carolina, and I think he went to somewhere else, and then he's done phenomenally with the Minnesota Vikings. And so being mature, sometimes is part of the process, and you kind of have to lose. You kind of have to figure it out a little bit, and so how much time it's a really tough question, because maybe you hold on to a guy too long, maybe you hold on to him too late, and maybe the strategy is to look at a guy that's been around a little bit and go, let's pick him, because he's been seasoned. So you take a guy like Mike Vrabel, where he's had a coaching stint now a little bit, or you take John Gruden, who is out there and his name's been flying around, and when you're a coach, you've been fired, you've had it kind of tough for a while, you get a little grit under you, and you become a better coach. I think it helped Nick Saban and throughout his career. But then the other side of it, you take like a Don Shula. I think he was 35 years old when he was hired in Baltimore, and took the Colts to the Super Bowl and coached Johnny Unitas, and then he goes to the Miami Dolphins and won more games than anyone. And he was one of those guys that you just kind of threw in early, and he was incredible. Bill Walsh, who is credited with so much of what is the NFL today, as far as coaches, as far as philosophy. Paul Brown despised him when he left and blackballed him and wouldn't let him get hired. And so, man, picking the right coach in any situation, if you get the right guy, it's huge. And it changes everything. Dan Campbell at the Detroit Lions, amazing hire. And it's the first head coaching job he had. But, they got the right guy in the right circumstance with the right people around him. It can be magical. I know Mark Trestman is a good friend of mine. He's a senior analyst for the Los Angeles Chargers, been a head coach in the NFL. And he goes, Jay Cutler basically killed my time in Chicago.
Wow.
He killed it. And he goes, so having the right quarter, you just got to get the right, who would have thought, Sean, Dan Campbell and Jared Goff would end up being where they are today, right? No one picks that and goes, man, you are the smartest GM.
That's right.
You're the smartest organization in the world. And by the way, Belichick, his first year, it was one of his first years. I don't know, he's 0-2, and we beat them. I was with the Cincinnati Bengals at the time, and I had a former offensive lineman. I go, what's it like in New England? And he goes, this sucks. He goes, it's like playing in high school. These guys are so, and this was the game before Drew Bledsoe gets hurt, and in comes Tom Brady.
Wow.
So the right. It's so much about the right people at the right time, and it's a collection of people that and it includes players, it includes coaches, it includes the organization, and I think it's a hard thing to figure out. I don't think there really is one answer to it.
Scott, I could pick your brain about football all day. We're up against the clock here, so I'll let you go, but we'll chat again next week. Thanks for your time.
You got it.
Scott Mitchell, Utah football legend, NFL vet. Always great to get insight on the player perspective on these coaching changes or potential coaching changes in the NFL. We don't get a ton of that here in this market. So great to hear from Scott Mitchell, who spent a lot of time with several different franchises in the NFL. All right, Utah Hockey Club in action tonight. Belle Fraser, Utah Hockey Club insider, joins us next as the Utah Hockey Club is hosting the defending Stanley Cup champs. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. As James mentioned in his update, Utah hosting one of the powerhouse teams in the NHL at the Delta Center. 8 p.m. the puck drops on TNT. Bell Fraser joins me, Utah Hockey Club insider, to talk about this matchup and all the goings-on with the Utah Hockey Club. Bell, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's always great catching up with you. Before we get into the matchup tonight, it's been a minute since we checked in. The longest losing streak of the season took place between December 22nd and New Year's Eve for this team. They bounced back with a victory over Calgary and then another overtime loss on Saturday against Dallas. But if you look all the way back to that 5 games in a row that this club dropped, what was the major issue in those 5, or was it different each game?
I mean, it was probably a little bit different each game, but I think the main thing was just lack of scoring. You know, to start December and on that winning streak they had, they won 4 straight and they won 6 out of 7, and those they scored 4 or more goals a night. And they were getting contributions from up and down the lineup. You know, obviously the first line was Clayton Keller. He had that 4-point night, which was a career high, but the third line got going. The fourth line was producing. So I think you just saw their offensive depth on display a bit more. And then when they went for their losing streak, you know, they were held to 2 or less goals for a few games in a row, and they just couldn't get themselves back into games, even if they were down 1 or 2. They just didn't find the backbreaker or the equalizer in time. So obviously, if you're not scoring enough goals, that's going to hurt you. And then the team isn't using this as an excuse whatsoever, but they have been dealing with a bit of an illness that has gone through the room. Clayton Keller missed a game. Matthias Michelli missed a game. And Coach said today that they're feeling better. No one has a fever anymore. It's more just like sniffly noses now. But they were battling it on the road trip. So, you know, they won't say that that's an excuse. They're professional athletes and every team deals with it. But I definitely think being away for 8 days when there's, you know, a virus going through the locker room can't help matters. So they're coming out of the other side of that, and now they have 7 straight games at Delta Center to kind of get things back on the rails. I believe last night they were 4 points out of the second wild card spot. So they're still within reach, but January has quickly become a really important month for them. They need to probably go above 500 this month if they still want to be in that postseason picture. And I think that's the message in the locker room, that just because it's the midpoint of the season and after New Year and maybe a slump in the year, no reason to take a break. And this is actually when they really need to start their biggest push.
Well, they're going to have to do that against some stiff competition, starting with Florida tonight. The keys in this matchup, in your mind, are what?
Oof. I mean, it's funny. We asked the players and coach that, and, you know, this is the reigning Stanley Cup champion. So you kind of just have to expect that they're going to play a playoff-style game from the start. And it's kind of like, I don't know if I was on when they were playing the Oilers, but it's like when you go against McDavid, you kind of know that they're going to get you sometimes, but you have to be committed to your game, that you're not going to let it slip away. You know, if their first line and Alexander Barkov comes out strong, you kind of have to manage the game within the game to get the momentum back and kind of try to push them on their heels a bit. And I think for them, too, just defensively, they can't get frustrated. You know, Coach said a couple days ago that he feels like sometimes his team gets a little emotional on home ice and maybe lets the opponents get under their skin too easy. And if there's any team in the NHL that is good at getting under your skin and forcing you to take undisciplined penalties, it's the Florida Panthers. You look at guys like Bennett and Kachuk, you know, they're talented players, but whether they're chirping the guys or, you know, slashing them after the whistle, they throw an edge to the game. So I think this will be a test of Utah's maturity, that if they can go against a team that's not only physically talented, but kind of mentally controls the game against a lot of their opponents. So I think for Utah, it's being disciplined, it's staying level-headed, using their speed, and also converting on special teams, too, taking advantage of power plays if they get them and shutting them down on the penalty kill. Utah has one of Florida's best penalty killers last year was Kevin Stenlin, and he's now on Utah's side. So, you know, that's a plus for Utah. But, yeah, I think it's all the little things and, you know, not getting too intimidated just because they lifted the cup last year. You know, it's just another team in the league that they are, you know, very easily participating in on a nightly basis.
You just mentioned Matthew Tkachuk, and he's he's got a special relationship with the Utah captain, Clayton Keller. These guys go all the way back to childhood, and both had nice things to say about one another this week. Just your insight on the relationship that these guys have. And, I guess hockey is, in its own way, it's a small world, but pretty cool to see at the NHL level guys that are like captain-level players that used to play, Little League together.
Yeah, it's really cool. I talked to both of them this morning, and I wrote a story about this when Keller went back to St. Louis. That's on the Tribune. But him and Tkachuk were part of a really big youth movement in St. Louis just for youth hockey. And in their draft year, it was 2016, the draft year. There were 12 Americans drafted in the first round, and 5 of those came out of St. Louis, which is, pretty. That's a lot for anywhere, but specifically a state that wasn't known for producing, high quality hockey players. And a lot of that came from Keith Tkachuk, who's Matthew and Brady Tkachuk's dad, who was, an NHL legend himself. But even when he was still playing, he took his time off to coach that St. Louis Youth League, and then both Matthew and Keller went and played at the National Development Program together. So they've really seen each other through the ranks, and they were, one after another in that first round in the draft. So it's really cool that they both made it to this level, but it's also cool that, that St. Louis group kind of put them on the map, and they have really, carried the popularity of St. Louis to become a really big hockey town. And obviously the Blues winning the Stanley Cup helped. But yeah, Tkachuk was saying that ever since he was 8, 9, and 10, Keller was always the best player on the ice no matter what. And all the other guys were kind of trying to follow him and do what he was doing. And he was just talking about the captaincy too that Keller has this year. He said it was the obvious choice to him. Even when they were in Arizona, he felt like Keller was the leader on the ice and off the ice. So he thinks it was the right choice, obviously, because they're buddies. But I think tonight when the puck drops, they're not friends anymore. But it's cool before the game that they're able to kind of reflect on the childhood they had together.
Belle Frazier, our guest, Utah Hockey Club insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Make sure you're reading all these special pieces that she's writing. Really good insight on the relationship between Matthew Tkachuk and Clayton Keller. And Bill Armstrong, you talk about St. Louis and a youth hockey movement that actually led to like concrete NHL level results. That's insane. I did not know that 5 out of 16 number. That's really something. But we've talked about this before. We've talked to guys in the franchise about this before. My hope is, as someone who grew up here in Utah after moving from Minnesota, where obviously youth hockey was huge there, came here in the early 90s, and it was not a big thing in Salt Lake City. This is something that the Utah Hockey Club, it's kind of like a responsibility that they're ready to take on, it seems like. What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, totally. And I talked to Keller about that in St. Louis, and, he was talking about how he gives all credit to his career to the guys that put together those youth leagues for him and took the time to do that. And he said a big part of it was that the NHL players who played in St. Louis stayed. They didn't, after they retired or got traded, move to Florida or retire somewhere else. They stayed in the community, and they made sure that the next generation of hockey players had role models and really good coaching to help them get to that next level. And he said he's excited that they have that opportunity in Utah. The Learn to Play just started through the Utah Hockey Club program, and, players will be at that throughout the year. So I think they're really committed to not just making Utah an NHL market, but just a hockey market in general. And, another star on this team, Logan Cooley, first time he played hockey was in the Pittsburgh Penguins Learn to Skate, the same type of program that Utah just put on. So a lot of these players started in the programs that, Smith Entertainment Group and the team is really trying to promote. So I think it's something that they're appreciative of from their childhood and kind of wanting to pay back. And it's a big thing that they all talk about, even Gunther too, being able to be 20, 21 years old and be a role model for these kids who are falling in love with the sport for the first time. So I think they all remember where they came from, and it makes them kind of want to give that forward to their new community.
Well, you mentioned earlier where Utah's at in the standings right now, within striking distance of a playoff spot. And yes, plenty of hockey left to be played, but it was interesting when, Utah got the franchise and how quick the timeline was. There was kind of a lot of scrambling of people. Okay, well, what do we expect? The Jazz stink right now. Are we going to get playoff hockey? And Bill Armstrong was really, really careful to let people know, hey, yeah, this is a good young roster. We have a plan. We have a vision, but we're in a rebuild, and it might take some time. Yeah. It seemed like he was not pushing back, but just being careful about setting expectations on playoff hockey. Has that changed at all as the season has progressed?
No, I mean, I think I've kind of stood by that since the beginning of the season, where if this team doesn't make playoffs, it is not a failure of the season at all. I think it's almost, from an outside perspective, more expected than for them to make it, just based on being in the fourth year of a rebuild and also the injuries they've had. We haven't been able to fully evaluate this team because they've been down 3 to 4 defensemen the entire year. John Marino skating, Sean Durzi skating, Lamoureux skating, and Bertuzzo's on IR now. But those 4 guys aren't in the nightly lineup. So I think it's hard to know what this team is actually made of and what they could look like in a playoff picture without, the lineup that they would probably start round 1, game 1 with. So I think that goes into it too, where you're not going to get too high or too low on this team because it's probably not the full roster that Bill Armstrong imagined he would be evaluating this point in the season. But I do think the stretches that this team has gone on, they're competitive against some of the top teams in the league. And there's a belief inside that locker room that they are going to make the playoffs. I was talking to Michael Kessling the other week, and he said it's kind of just an expectation in here. We expect to make playoffs at this point. It's not like, oh, maybe if we push really hard, we could try to do it, and they're feeling sorry for themselves or thinking that they're, not up to par with the other teams. I think the leaps that they've taken this year have that group believing that this is what they're made for. And I think guys like Kevin Stenlin, who we talked about, former Florida Panther, Ian Cole, Bertuzzo, Sergachev, obviously, who have won and been there, all Stanley Cup champions. They bring a different culture to the locker room. And I think it's no longer that they're this young team that's figuring it out, which they are, but they kind of have these leaders that I think have helped push them along and do that. So, yeah, I think it's the same conversation that you can't blame them if they don't make it. But if they're playing impactful, meaningful games at the end of the season, if they end 2 points or 1 point or 3 points out of a playoff spot, that's a lot better than they've been in previous seasons. So I think it's all about a short measuring stick of just taking a step. And if that results in a first-round appearance, that would be great. But I don't think Utah fans should be discouraged if it doesn't work out that way in terms of the trajectory of the team.
Last thing before I let you go, you mentioned that the emotion or whatever on home ice has not always been helpful to this team, and it is a long home stand coming up. Do they practice any differently? Do they do anything differently at this point in the season to try and figure out what the woes on home ice have been a result of, or is it just sticking to the plan right now?
Yeah, it's definitely sticking to the plan. I think they don't want to change anything in their preparation or mindset. They want so badly to perform for this new fan base that has been so welcoming to them and so supportive. So I think that's part of it. But at a certain point, it's like every NHL team plays half the season on the road, half at home. You can't really make excuses. They've got to figure it out. And, they're going to be forced to. It's a season-high 9 games at Delta Center in January. So, speaking from a numbers point, you would think on average a few wins would have to drop on home ice. And I also almost think it helps that they're coming out of losing 6 of their last 7, because not only do they need to win on home ice, they need to win, period. The last homestand they were on a 4-game winning streak, so they kind of had that levity, and then they dropped 3 straight. So they kind of have double pressure to turn things around right now, and I think the fans will be excited. Liam O'Brien is in the lineup tonight. He hasn't had a game at Delta Center since feels like October maybe. So he's in the lineup still. He's on the third line. And if that doesn't get the crowd going and the team going, even if he's playing, 8 to 10 minutes a night, I think he just brings an extra energy and is a fan favorite. So that'll be a good addition at Delta Center tonight, and maybe can get this team, their first regulation win here since November.
Wow. Belle, looking forward to seeing you at probably a couple of these games. Always appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Belle Fraser, Utah Hockey Club insider over at the Salt Lake Tribune. As she mentioned, it is a pretty significant home stretch here, starting with these Florida Panthers. That is a powerhouse team. They're not necessarily at the top of the standings like they were at the end of last season, but they're good. A lot of veteran players and guys with cup experience, obviously. But then If you just go based on the standings, this might be the home stand that you want to go, splurge on some tickets and watch the Utah Hockey Club playing at the Delta Center. Florida, very tough opponent to start this home stand. San Jose on Friday, not good. New York, not good. That's the New York Islanders, by the way. Montreal.
And chance to see Celebrini, though, too. With
Macklin Celebrini on Friday.
Yeah, even though they're not good. That's a winnable game, plus see one of the better young talents.
Although Utah did sink to the Sharks' level in a couple matchups earlier this year. But then you got the Islanders, who are not great right now. Montreal's kind of middle of the pack in the East. The New York Rangers having their struggles this year. I mean, these are all winnable games. San Jose, New York, Montreal, the other New York, all very winnable. St. Louis right above Utah in the standings, and that's on Saturday. That's next weekend, Saturday, January 18th.
The Bill Armstrong game, of course.
And then the following Monday, Winnipeg's really good. So you're kind of bookending this homestand. Florida's good. Winnipeg's good. The meat in the middle of that sandwich, this is an opportunity for Utah Hockey Club to put together a little bit of a streak. That's the hope, at least.
Let's go streaking.
Okay. I see what you did there. I don't like that you did it, but I see what you did. All right. For your chance to win tickets to a Runnin' Utes home game, text Utes to 33986. Win a pair of tickets. In fact, maybe we'll take a little time, talk some Runnin' Utes in our next hour. There's lots left to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. I've got a question for you about what is the most emasculating, embarrassing thing that can happen in sports. I put a poll up on this on Twitter at RealOC Sports. I want your thoughts. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Eight 877-353-0700 if you want to weigh in on the Dish Pros text line. This is an important question. The most embarrassing, emasculating thing that can happen to you in team sports. I clarified team sports because, unfortunately, the host of the Sean O'Connell Show, me, knows what the most embarrassing thing that can happen in sports is, and that is being knocked out in a prize fight. There's nothing more embarrassing than that. That is terrible.
I don't know. I have one of my sister-in-laws. Now she was only 9 or 10. Okay, so we'll take that in consideration. But she did a little gymnastics.
Okay,
and there's a hilarious video of her starting her approach on the vault and then just falling.
Okay,
in the middle of the mat.
We've all tripped. Okay, that's fine.
Just like losing her, but this was not. She didn't trip on anything. She just like lost her head completely and just fell.
All right. Well, that's probably pretty embarrassing. By the way,
but that was on
counts.
national TV. You're when you've been knocked out.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count when you're a little kid. Nothing counts when you're a little kid. You have to be an adult. You have to be at least in high school.
I had to mention that just in case she's listening.
She's probably listening.
To give her just to rib her a little bit.
Give everyone her first and last name and home address so that they can they can
going to dox her too. Let's do this.
So. Yeah, the most embarrassing. I'm talking about team sports because being knocked out is the most embarrassing thing. Now, it can be. There are varying levels of being knocked out. I've had if it goes all the way up to 10, I've had like the level 8, where you have like the stiff. You have the fencer's pose. Your eyes roll back. I've been victim of that.
Okay,
that sucks. Okay,
so what's 10? Like most of Mike Tyson's knockouts.
No, 10 is you lose control of your faculties.
Okay.
That does happen.
Okay.
Even some like elite dudes, some world famous guys have allegedly or confirmed, wink, wink, have pooped their pants when they get knocked out.
Okay.
And you just kind of have to.
That's what I haven't heard of. I haven't watched enough combat sports to know that that's a thing.
And you kind of like
that
you
would be embarrassing.
You want to make fun of it, but also you can't make fun of it because it's just like, what do you do? Like,
how can you?
You're unconscious.
You control that.
You're not in charge anyway. So that's the most embarrassing thing. But in team sports, James, I put a poll up at Real OC Sports for the people who want to vote. Getting posterized by a dunk is right now, it's what sparked this question because I was watching SportsCenter and it was just poster after poster after poster after poster. And obviously we've seen some iconic Jazz dunks and some iconic Jazz posterizations, guys getting,
Anthony Edwards last year on John Collins. I think John Collins is still scarred from that.
Rudy Gobert got posterized a couple of times.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair to Rudy, he turned guys away far more often than he got posterized. And the alternative, and this is why I would never vote for a poster dunk, because the alternative is you just let the guy do it.
And that's
worse.
Yeah, that's worse. You got to at least be competitive. Alonzo Mourning had that infamous one for him, Vince Carter.
Yes,
with the net when he
Baron
was with the
Davis,
Nets. But Alonzo
Kirilenko.
Mourning, he went for it. Like you got to give a guy credit. A great shot blocker, great prideful shot blocker, credit for going for it.
I got to believe that for shot blockers, this is the worst. That they would definitely give this one because, it's what people still highlight and remember years later. There are very few instances when we're just like, do you remember that time when Rudy Gobert went up and just turned away so-and-so or just completely stuffed? Because that would be emasculating for the dunker.
Yes.
But obviously
we don't replay block dunk highlights.
You don't make
at all. We play poster dunk highlights all the time.
I've literally never seen a poster, like an actual poster of the dunk being blocked.
Yeah,
by the shot blocker.
Rudy Gobert and his people are working on it. Let's be sure.
You know what? Let's start a movement, James. Let's start a movement.
We
all
need
of
Walker
you
Kessler
right
and his people too to get working on it.
Any shot blocker in college or NBA basketball, I don't care if you're in the G League. I want you printing posters of the dunker being stuffed. All right? Yes, let's do this. We're going to start a movement here,
Yes,
James.
we are.
And we're going to have to come up
poster stuff.
Poster block, poster stuff. But anyway, I put that one on there. That one to me, not that embarrassing because you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're going up for the block.
Sometimes the guy's more athletic, the guy has more leverage, he dunks on you.
And you know what? If your job is a shot blocker, your percentage is probably incredibly high. You probably get posterized I don't know, once, twice, 3 times. Look, there's one on the highlights right now.
Top Sports
As
Center
we're
top
speaking,
10.
the top 3 play
The
college
Duke
basketball.
game. Oh, don't watch the next one.
The next one is the buzzer beater. I don't like that. But if you're a shot blocker, your percentage, you're probably batting like 900 and above, right? Like you're not getting posterized more than a few times in your career, and you're blocking hundreds of shots. But we never. And here's LeBron again. There's another poster dunk. So you see why I asked the question.
Yes.
All right.
One's winning.
What is the most emasculating and embarrassing thing that can happen to you in team sports? The poster dunk gets almost 40% of the vote. The big miss strikeout is, to me, that would be a hard one, where, especially in an important at-bat, you just whiff.
Yeah, that's the one I voted for. I feel like that is completely embarrassing, emasculating. Yeah, but it's losing, isn't it?
Yeah, and basically every poll we run that has a baseball option, people
true.
just don't. Anyway, so less than 5% say that it's that. Someone did comment and say it's actually the striking out looking, the backwards K that's more embarrassing.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, because that one you're just like, oh.
Either way, I guess it looks like you were fooled big time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The nutmeg goal. And again, I only have so many characters. Like getting nutmegged, no matter where it's
Soccer
at.
expert Sean O'Connell. Let's explain nutmeg for us.
If a ball or a puck goes between your legs and ends up in the same sequence on the same play in the goal, it doesn't have to be like directly through the legs, I don't think. But like
if it goes through someone's legs.
Yeah, if you get nutmegged and that leads to a goal, that's got to be really embarrassing.
Yeah.
They call it the 5-hole in hockey. If you
the goalie
slide one between the pads, like that's tough. You don't want to see that, because it's supposed to be the easiest thing to stop, but I don't know that it actually is. So that one is getting 20% of the vote, and then the football pancake or decleat. I wish there were more options, because those are actually two different things.
Yeah.
Getting decleated on like a blindside hit, there's not a lot you can do about it. I had one in my high school career. I got the first thing that hit the ground as I was chasing a running back down. The first thing that hit the ground was the back of my head. I just got annihilated. Now, I hopped right back up. I wasn't injured. I wasn't hurt. I didn't lay on the ground for any measure of time. I just hopped back up and ran back out there, but it was right on the sideline. We were playing against Bingham, all right? And they were a much better team than we were. It was a very close game, and like I thought we were actually going to pull it out and win. We didn't end up doing so, but I got smashed by their best player, a kid named Tyler DeBry, who actually ended up being a teammate of mine when I transferred to Weber State. He had a great career at Dixie.
I'm sure he told you about it.
He remembered it. Yeah. He remembered it, and I remembered it too, because it was probably the highlight hit of his entire high school career, and he was a really good player, but we were right in front of that bench. It was that sideline. I'm turning the corner, chasing the running back, and he just blows me up on a crackback. He's coming back toward the ball after running a route or something, and just I explode. Like backflip, everything, and everyone on that sideline is talking trash. I ran back to the huddle. I was embarrassed. Lived to fight another day, whatever. But we both remembered the hit 5 years later.
Yeah.
We were playing as teammates together, and we were talking trash about that game, and he remembered the hit, and I was like, yeah, that sucked, man. That was the worst.
You're like, I got nothing to say about that.
There's nothing you can say. There's no – now, being –
You got me.
I think being pancaked is actually worse, because when I think of a pancake, there's not a blindside element to it. It's just I have imposed my will upon you. I'm bigger. I am stronger. I have pushed you out of the way, or, like I planted you if you're the running back trying to go through the hole and I meet you in the hole, or vice versa. That's a rough one. If you get planted by a hit that is coming, James, I don't know if there's anything more embarrassing in team sports than that. And that one right now is just behind the poster dunk in the votes. That's 36% of the votes right now.
So I have to say from experience, OC, the rim check dunk is the most emasculating thing.
On the 8-foot hoop, especially?
I didn't say how high the hoop was, but from experience.
Yes, from experience. That's how I knew you were talking about an 8-foot hoop.
Maybe in dunk ball, But may or may not be from dunk ball, 8 and 9 foot hoop. But yeah, that's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness though, I wonder if that is more if we pulled NBA players or high level basketball players, I wonder if that would go higher than getting posterized.
That'd be a good question.
Yeah.
Alex Markham weighed in, said the one-on-one ankle break where you get juked out of your shorts, that's a bad one.
Yeah, that's also
especially
a bad one.
if you fall down. If you fall down after that, that's as embarrassing as it gets. This one, can't say I hate it, but it's funny. Playing golf and pretending it's a real sport is the most emasculating thing. No, I said team sports. Team sports.
Yeah. Come on now. That's the only reason why that one's disqualified, because it's not a team sport.
Dustin Coons on Twitter brings up a great point. He says it's the decleat. Bad during, so the experience of actually getting decleated, bad. Exponentially worse during film review. Yes.
I was going to say, like, I don't know how much, if you were able to see that decleating you talked about that you were victimized by on film, but I'm sure it's worse on film.
Yeah, you could see it on film. It was terrible on film. However, this was pre-HD cameras, grainy VHS.
Oh, so it didn't look that bad on film.
It could have looked worse. It didn't look that bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, that. Are we sure that's me?
Yeah,
I can't tell that's number. That's my number.
I don't know if that was me, guys. Everyone's like, we watched the game. We know that was you. There were snot bubbles. Yeah, whatever. You know? All right, at Real OC Sports, if you want to weigh in on the very, very important Twitter poll of the most emasculating and embarrassing thing that can happen in pro sports. Poster dunk, a big strikeout, a nutmeg that leads to a goal, the football pancake, or decleat.
Or if you're like me and just has gotten rim checked one time.
Yes.
Just one time.
If you were playing on one of those Fisher-Price hoops and got rim checked like James, you can also weigh in there. All right, Mike Yam is going to join us, talk a little NFL. That's coming up to start hour number 3. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, Mike Yam's going to join us here in about 5 minutes. He had some things to wrap up. We're going to get to him as soon as we can. Talk a little NFL football. Some coaching carousel news in the NFL. Obviously, playoffs beginning this weekend. We are your home of the NFL playoffs on radio in Salt Lake City. Wild card triple header this weekend and all the way through the Super Bowl. Playoff football right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. James, since we have a minute or two before we get to Mike Yam, a little order of business. You remember yesterday when we were talking about Milka chocolates? This is why I love being on radio. I love our listeners because we were talking about the Milka brand and how it is a treat to go to Europe and have their particular we think superior brand.
But it's like
candy
it's
bars.
Basically their version of Hershey's. It's just much better.
Yeah, but it's way better.
It's not necessarily superior to them, but it is to us. Yeah.
A couple people weighed in. Wanderlust, which is a small business at Gardner Village. You know where Gardner Village is, right?
Yeah.
Their little
Shout
shop
out to Witch Fest.
We've all been to Witch Fest. Wanderlust, one of the little cute, adorable shops there. They've got Milka.
Yeah.
They import it from Europe.
I was going to mention to you yesterday, but it was just quick segment. We had to get to a break. There are places here that sell it. That's one of them. And the Toasters, one of the sandwich shops downtown here, they've got Milka and a few other places too. Yeah.
Okay, and then another person weighed in. This is the most feedback we get, by the way, when we talk about candy bars. Doesn't matter what I say about sports, but if I talk candy bars, people are going to weigh in and tell me how they feel. Also told me one of our listeners weighed in and said Pirate O's, which is a long-standing little specialty shop down in the Draper area. Pirate O's also imports Milka.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys. Now we know at least a couple of outlets we can get our Milka at.
Yeah, you don't have to go to Europe to get it. You get more flavors when you go to Europe, but they've got a few places here that sell.
It's probably a little more cost effective to not go to Europe just to get the $2 candy bar.
To get their not even the fanciest gourmet chocolate you can get there. Yeah, probably not the best.
Is that the
even though it's far superior than our regular chocolate?
Is that the equivalent of someone coming to the United States and just being like, I traveled all this way to get KFC?
Yeah.
You're the only ones who have authentic Kentucky Fried Chicken. Which, by the way, if you want that, you should come to Salt Lake City because first location, boom, right here, State Street.
Yeah, is that the one they call Harmon?
Yeah. That was the first one. Harlan's or Harmon's? Yeah. I think it's Utah Athletic Director Mark Harlan that actually.
Harlan Cafe.
I think he owns that. All right, fire it up. Try to see if we can get a hold of Mike Yam here. He said 1:15, so it's almost 1:15, right? We're almost there. In any case, the job openings in the NFL, fascinating. We'll talk about that with Mike Yam. I'm going to put this embarrassment question to him. You can still weigh in at 877-353-0700. What's the most emasculating thing that could happen in pro sports?
I think Yam's going to definitely be like, from experience, the rim check, too.
Yes, the rim
definitely
check.
the rim check. I'm like James.
A couple people weighed in and said the soccer own goal is as embarrassing and as awful as it can get. Yes. Also, depending on what country you're playing in, can be life-threatening if you own goal. And then this one from 1743. Robin Ventura charging the mound and getting his butt kicked by 40-year-old Nolan Ryan. Also pretty embarrassing. Yeah, you talk about like individual instances in team sports that have withstood the test of time for being embarrassing. That one is way up there. That's a tough one to overcome. Good luck to you, Robin Ventura. Look at this. People still weighing in. 1624 says World Market also has Milka. Just, all right, the whole rest of the show today, I just want to talk about where you can get delicious treats. All right, that's all I need from you. 877-353-0700. Yam is the kind of guy who would know where you can get specialty chocolates in whatever market he's in. Mike Yam joins me here. on ESPN 700. Yammer, what's up?
So first of all, OC, it's always good to get an invite from you. Is number one. Number two, my A1C number's a little high, so the fact that you're throwing out that I would know where you can find fine chocolates is maybe not the best timing because I'm trying to stay off of the sweets. But to sort of back up your claims, yes, I probably would be able to do that for a lot of folks.
Well, that's nice. We'll get you covered next time you're in Salt Lake City. You don't have to do the research on that. Also, I don't believe that the A1C is high for you. You're a specimen. You're fit. You're doing the boot camp all the time. There's no way that there's no way that Yam has any sort of numbers out of whack.
No, I'm telling you, man, like it's shocking to me that is actually the case. Now, I am not in like Sean, pre-fight mode where I'm literally eating for lunch tuna fish out of like a tuna can with nothing else.
Yes,
okay?
well,
like, for as much as
neither am I.
Look
so
like I'm jacked. I know I might look jacked on TV, but I can assure you I am absolutely not. So it's not shocking. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, dude, I try my best to stay as fit as possible, but it's not always easy, especially if you got a sweet tooth.
Yeah, and the older I get, the more I seem to enjoy every food that's bad for me, which is a bad combination. But here we are.
Yo, you're not alone.
All right. Let's talk a little NFL football here, if you don't mind. The coaching carousel spins this time of year every year. What's the most interesting, intriguing, open job in your mind right now in the NFL?
Okay, so I did the show on Monday. The Monday after the regular season is usually chaotic, right? You're talking about head coaches, offensive coordinators, DCs, just people that you kind of anticipate as the season unfolds is probably going to lose their job. And then there's some groups and some teams where there was a lot of speculation that those coaches might lose their gigs and they remain intact. And, Sean, I'm a Giants fan. I know there was a lot of speculation about Joe Shane, their GM, and Brian Daboll, both those guys locked in. A little surprised, to be honest with you, about Antonio Pierce because of the timing of it. He addressed it. We had that press conference on NFL Network while, a couple minutes after it had started, and it felt like everything was okay. Next day, obviously, he loses his job, which the one and dones are a little bothersome. But if you said to me, like, hey, who are the teams right now that could be in a decent position to really move forward quickly, I would point to still – at this point, the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
You got your quarterback that's in place. You feel good about some of those offensive pieces. I think if you can find someone that can help mold Caleb Williams, and I think you got an opportunity. Now, that division's a juggernaut, but at the end of the day, if it's all about pieces, I still like the pieces in Chicago.
I like that job. I like Caleb Williams' numbers were good this year. I know that he didn't get the wins he wanted to, and he's been overshadowed a little bit by Daniels in Washington and by what Bo Nix was able to do in Denver. But he's a good player. Not everyone in Salt Lake City's favorite guy because of his trash talk against the Utes. It wasn't even really talk so much as it was the way he painted his nails. But in any case, I think he's a really good football player. You might have to deal with him differently than you do veteran quarterbacks, but I still think he's talented. Is that calculus that NFL franchises have to actually pay attention to at this point, that this new generation of players are guys that come from an NIL era, a transfer portal era, a time in college football that is so drastically different than what, the 10-year vets in the NFL dealt with? Is that something that NFL franchises have to account for?
Yeah, Sean, it's a really good point because I think there was, and this because you cover a lot of college football, and you and I have done a ton of shows over the years together in the college realm, where there is an evolution of coaching that is taking place in front of our eyes. I think, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look back at this era of college football as, in the last few years, as really the defining moment for the sport and the adapted nature that these coaches have had to execute on because of the portal, because of NIL, recruiting their own guys to stay on their campuses. And now you're sort of seeing that personality sort of trickle into the NFL level. I mean, these players, especially now over the next couple of years, some of these guys are going to be paid, significant dollars at the college level, to the point, Sean, where, there's a legit conversation for some of these players. Hey, I might make more money in college to stay an extra year to help, and then I would depending on where I get drafted. There are guys, and we saw this, and Cam Ward was in the Heisman conversation. He might be the first quarterback taken off the board in the draft. We watched him play at Washington State, and then he gets an opportunity where, there were some teams, whether it was Florida State or Miami, both of those teams were interested. People that, I've kind of talked to over the last couple of months or so have indicated like, hey, he used those deals to leverage a higher paycheck essentially with Miami. And what did he do? Like they had a really good year. And I know it didn't play out the way Mario Cristobal had hoped, but it was a really good season for him. And he thrust himself into the Heisman conversation. He went from a quarterback at Washington State to maybe now the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. I mean, that's a really interesting path, but I think that personality is now trickling, and it will trickle over time into Sunday football and the personality of the players that we're going to be watching.
You can't talk personality in football without talking about Deion Sanders, and his star has risen as a coach the same way it did as a player. He did a great job in Colorado. He took home a Heisman Trophy through Travis Hunter, and obviously his son, Shador, is highly thought of in NFL circles and in college football circles. We heard his name attached with the Raiders' potential opening before it was actually open. Do you think that there is room for Coach Prime in the NFL as a head coach?
I want to say yes. And I think the reality is it's probably a yes. But the more and more people that I talk to at the college level, the more I pause. He's crushing it in Boulder.
Yeah.
Sean, you've been to Boulder a couple times, right?
Correct.
For some games? Okay. So I mean, when I was covering the Pac-12, if you would have said to me, hey, like, what are those destinations, those secret gems? I think people would gravitate to whatever the respective conference, or whatever the respective team is for different reasons. Boulder legitimately is a gem. And, I remember doing some of those shows with Rick Neuheisel, and Rick would tell me, hey, like, you'd be able to pull a Southern California kid who hadn't really seen snow before. Now, granted, as a guy that grew up in the Northeast, you try to get the hell away from the snow, which is always like sort of a foreign thing when people are trying to go to it. But the point is, there's great resources there. He's not told no. I mean, think about that. What can Prime do? Or what can't Prime do on that campus? He literally can do essentially whatever he wants with his program. And I don't know if you can make that case for every head coach in college football, number one. And I don't think that happens in the NFL for a lot of coaches. I think there's a select few who have maybe a little more clout than others and the leeway to be able to run things the way that they want to do. But eventually over time, that changes. And in the college game, I don't know if that necessarily changes as quickly. I mean, we saw Bill Belichick, right? I mean, essentially get relieved of his duties in New England. And if there's one guy in the NFL that you would have pointed to over the last 10 years that should have been able to kind of write his own ticket, it would be Belichick. That didn't happen. So for Prime, the people on the college level will tell you there's way too many positive things happening in Boulder around Prime, and the resources that he has there to sort of build a consistent giant are pretty good. And you are seeing this leveling out across the board in college football of talent, where it's not just about one or two teams. Now all of a sudden there's some other teams that are able to compete, and NIL has been a little bit of an equalizer. I love that the kids are getting paid. Candidly, I think that's a good thing. The system that's in place, I think, is flawed, and there are some issues, and I wish there were some more guardrails around some of this stuff. But, that's just not the world that we live in. And candidly, I just think the NCAA has to blame no one but themselves for why we're in the situation that we're in.
Mike Yam is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. You see him on the NFL Network, occasionally on the CW with the ACC stuff. We have not actually chatted since the Heisman Trophy was awarded to Travis Hunter. Yeah. You are a Heisman voter. Are you comfortable telling me who you voted for?
I did vote for Travis. And Genty I had number 2, and Gabriel I had in that 3 spot. And that did change because Cam Ward was the guy that I thought was going to be in that top 3. This is the first year, Sean, that I actually had the Heisman vote. You know what's crazy about it? You get the vote and you think you know what you're going to do. And I didn't vote before the championship games because I think that's insane. And I used to be very critical of the Heisman voters who did, and still am floored that Heisman voters haven't gotten their vote taken away for doing that. I think that's absurd. And candidly, like, my votes did change based off of that. I mean, I watched Dylan Gabriel play well in a championship game, and to me that was meaningful. So it did tweak a little bit, but Travis Hunter, there was a part of me that really wanted to give it to Genty because of how terrific he was, and statistically speaking, how dominant he was. And it could have been even more dominant had he finished out a lot of games, but the lead was so big that he didn't play in a lot of second halves. I went with Hunter because we don't see this. Like, it is so special what he was able to do on both sides of the ball, the amount of snaps that he played, how dominant he was as a defensive player and an offensive player. Those rare type moments were enough to move the needle for me in what was a really tough decision.
Yeah, that was the case I made. I don't have a Heisman vote. That was the case I made with people who were – and it seemed like here in Salt Lake City, I think there's a certain affection for Boise State because people recognize the underdog role that, like, University of Utah has had to fill and that BYU at times has had to fill, and they like that about Boise State. And seeing Ashton Genty almost get it done, had a lot of people here hoping he would get it done. But I'm with you that, you know, we have seen great running backs. We have never seen someone do what Travis Hunter did, and I'm glad to hear that my biases are confirmed by the illustrious mind of Mike Yam, who joins me for just another couple of minutes. So we have a playoff picture taking shape in the National Football League. Great Sunday night football game as the Lions finished out what has been the most special regular season in their franchise history. We'll get to the Chiefs here in just a second, but the number one seed in the NFC, the Lions, I know that, you know, you go all the way back with Goff and covering him when he was a Pac-12 quarterback. How much do you like seeing this Detroit Lions roster, laden, by the way, with Pac-12 players in the position they're in?
It's awesome. It's honestly, they are so much fun to watch. I loved watching them last year. I think we all can agree, even if you have your NFL team, if you're rooting for a second one, it would probably be the Lions. What Dan Campbell has been able to accomplish is friggin' awesome. And the toughness. You know, Sean, I know what kind of guy you are. I know you have a great appreciation for how they are winning football games, because it doesn't matter if one game the offense isn't clicking. It's all good, man. Their special teams, they'll get a couple, returns for a touchdown, and their defense will get a pick six, and they'll win that game. Sometimes the defense maybe has been banged up and struggled with some injuries. All good. Jared Goff's going to slice and dice and destroy a team like a surgeon out there with Amon-Ra. They lose David Montgomery. All good. Jahmyr Gibbs in the biggest game of the year, 4 touchdowns for him. There's this mental toughness that they bring to the table, and it is hard to root against them. And I even went into this game, Sean, I don't know if you felt this way. Heading into the Minnesota Vikings game, I thought the Vikings were the more complete team, strictly based off of how they were playing and their health. And then what does Detroit do? They go, dude, come on now. We're going to let Sam Darnold beat us? That dude was under constant pressure that entire game. Execution, I'm sure Kevin O'Connell and that team, they're watching the film and they're ready to pull their hair out. Some of the missed throws that Sam had in that game, and maybe if he connects with Justin Jefferson early in the back of the end zone, we're talking about a different result. Maybe the dynamics of that game change, but the Lions, man, have been – there's a part of me that really hopes they win the Super Bowl just because of the story.
This one it's for my personal edification only, because I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan, and I need to know, has the Super Bowl window closed for the 49ers? They've got an aging and expensive roster. There's not a ton of mechanisms you can do to get out from under some of this money without penalty. So have they missed their shot?
It's a great question. I hadn't thought about it like that. I don't know if I'm still over the fact that they had the season that they had. There's a part of me that says the window is not closed because of how talented I truly do think that this roster is. And had they been healthy the entire season, I think it's a different result. Not to mention, Brandon Ayuk comes in, and obviously a contract issue for him. Trent Williams, contract issue for him. Christian McCaffrey, who's their best player on the offensive side, misses most of this season. I think when you have those types of issues, and granted, I get it. Ayuk played until he didn't when he got hurt, and Trent Williams was out there for most of the season. There were moments early for those two guys specifically where I was like, maybe not being in camp the whole time might have affected those dudes.
Yeah.
But I truly don't know if we ever saw, and Sean, you're one of those, you're a fan of that team. Was there one game this year where you looked at them and said, oh, this is the team that's playing to the level that I thought they would play? And it might have been because the execution wasn't there or they just weren't totally healthy. And that's why if they're able to stay healthy and all things come together, I truly do think they're back in that mix next season. But this window is not big. I mean, it is definitely closing.
I said we would talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Back-to-back-to-back Super Bowls has never been done. They sat their starters. They rested everyone. Week 18, their 17th game of the year. They appeared to be poised to make another at least deep run. Who's the biggest threat to the Chiefs?
In the AFC or just in general?
Well, period. There are people who think that the biggest threat is in the AFC and that even the Detroit Lions or the Minnesota Vikings or Philadelphia doesn't have what it takes. But I want your thoughts.
So I would tell you, I think if we're talking NFC teams, candidly, I do think Detroit has the potential to go and beat them. I do think it's Philadelphia. I want to see what they look like this week, the Jalen Hurts situation with the concussion, how rusty he is. I do think Philadelphia's defense this year has been one of the best storylines in the NFL. But if you said to me, pick a team to win the Super Bowl, not named Kansas City, I would tell you it's the Baltimore Ravens. Defensively, they figured out the issues that were plaguing them earlier this year. Remember, they lost Mike McDonald. Their defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, comes in. There was some struggle. That team was historically great on defense a year ago. Massive struggles. That hasn't been an issue in the second half of the season. Offensively, they're a juggernaut. I think the Ravens are the sleeping giant in the NFL.
Love to hear the take from Mike Yam. We'll see how it plays out. And if he's wrong, we'll bring him back on air and we'll berate him for being incorrect. Is that fair?
100%. And we can talk chocolate and ice cream. and maybe that. I probably know my flavors better than my football.
I doubt that's true. You're an encyclopedia, my friend. Love catching up with you. Love chatting with you. And I want to remind everyone, Fried Rice and Marinara, a children's book written by Mike Yam, available on Amazon and everywhere you get your books. It is delightful. It is fantastic. And even though he's so great in sports media, I consider that to be his finest work and always will. So I mean that as a compliment, Mike.
I will, man. Dude, you and I talked about it for a long time before it came out, man. It was a huge passion project of mine, and I can't thank you enough for always bringing it up and being such a huge supporter. So, and I love talking with you, man. I miss working with you all the time. So whenever you give me an ask to come on with you, I'm always a guest.
Well, appreciate your time. Go do whatever the busy Mike Yam does, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Take care, man.
Mike Yam. Just an absolute delight of a human being, very, very knowledgeable on all things that he covers, college and NFL football, does a phenomenal job. And that's not lip service, by the way. I mean, as an aspiring author, as someone who's written books and would love for everyone to read them, his book is good. Fried Rice and Marinara. It's an easy read. It's a children's book. If you have kids, go get it. Support Mike Yam. Go get the book and read it to your kids. It's awesome.
Yeah, I imagine you've read it to your girls.
Yes, they love the book.
They love the book. Okay.
It's spoiler alert. It's about a young Mike Yam trying to decide what to have as a meal for his birthday party.
That's awesome.
Okay?
And because he's got the Asian and the Italian heritage.
Yes. A multicultural smorgasbord of food is available to him, and it's a delightful little read, and well illustrated. Good prose. It's phenomenal. Just go buy it. Go buy it. James?
A little aggressive there.
Go buy it.
I think I will.
All right. You should. Lots left to get to on the Sean O'Connell Show. You know what? I just lied. There's not that much left to get to because we only have 27 minutes left of the show. So there's not that much left to get to. But we will get to whatever we need.
Make the most of it, though.
We will make the most of these final 27 minutes, to include a conversation about what it means for Utah football that everybody is still hunting, though the transfer portal is closed and nobody can declare their intentions to leave. There are still big names in the transfer portal, and there's still a spring transfer portal open. Well, eventually. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Between the legs dribble, top of the key. Gets down the lane, draws contact, loses
Nice
the handle.
defense.
Ezra Asar comes away with it. Ezra in the open floor. Ezra shuffles it off the little layup.
Beautiful.
Good. 2-man game and an easy layup for Utah.
That highlight is Ezra Asar's nice fast break assist from Miro Little last night, 82-59. The Running Utes fall to number 3 Iowa State on the road in Ames. Utah Sports Radio Network gave us the sound. Bill Riley, Sean Mooney on the call. I abandoned the plans that I teased, and I tell you, James, that sometimes it feels good to be right. Multiple sources now reporting that Tom Brady and the Las Vegas Raiders have reached out to Bill Belichick to inquire about his willingness to return to the NFL and potentially coach the team in Las Vegas. Now, this would obviously close the door for Deion Sanders if Bill was interested in this. It would also make a complete mess of what is going on with North Carolina, who hired Bill Belichick in what a lot of people thought was like a bold and brash move. The thing about jobs like this, right? Bill Belichick, there's a lot of what you know with Bill Belichick, but of course, who you know is just as important in the NFL as it is in any other industry. There was all these reports out there that the NFL doesn't want Bill back. People are sick of Bill and his attitude and all that kind of stuff. All right, sure, fine. Except when Tom Brady becomes a part owner in a team and that team needs a new head coach, who do you think Tom Brady's going to call?
Well, I mean, what's funny about this, about the way you just framed it, is that when he left for Tampa, that was the story. Tom Brady's sick and tired of Bill Belichick's attitude.
Hey.
But he knows he's the best, and so as a minority owner, he's like, we need to get the best.
I'll tell you this. When I was 18 years old, I was sick and tired of living under my parents' roof and dealing with their rules, okay? I was sick and tired of it.
Get off my back.
But if somebody said to me,
18-year-old you impression.
Yes, if somebody was just like, hey, you know, if I need someone to raise this baby, I'd be like, give it to my parents. They're excellent at raising children. They will do their best to give you a disciplined and productive member of society.
That child will hate them, but there's no one better.
There's no hate. I love my parents very dearly.
When they're 18, maybe.
But here's the thing. Like, I totally understand. If you're Tom Brady or Matt Light or any longstanding member of that Patriots franchise, you probably got sick of Bill Belichick, right? The San Francisco 49ers got real sick of Jim Harbaugh. It happens, right? Relationships go sour, especially when there's a power dynamic play, as everyone starts asking the question. You get bored of the success of the Patriots. And while these guys are coexisting in the same building, people started asking the question, well, who really deserves the credit? Tom Brady or Bill Belichick? And that argument is permeating everything in sports for a couple of years, James. So, yeah, they got sick of each other, but it doesn't mean that Tom is stupid and that he doesn't recognize that, like, that guy knows what he's doing. Even if I believe, as Tom Brady, that I was the primary reason for 6 Super Bowls in New England, I still think that he was a huge part of it and is certainly an improvement over what the Raiders have right now. Yeah. And you can't really question when Bill Belichick had a great quarterback, and there are potentially some available in this draft, or maybe even in trade or free agency, you can't really question that Bill was able to build a good team around a great quarterback. Now, there's no Tom Brady in the draft as far as we know, but guess who wasn't even Tom Brady in the draft? Tom Brady! If he was universally accepted as the great player that he became, he wouldn't have been taken where he was taken. So I love this. I love that it's so predictable sometimes in the NFL, and that the Raiders are calling Bill and saying, "Hey, you want to come to Vegas?"
How funny is it that Bill we haven't heard him say it himself, but people who have sources around Bill Belichick have said the only reason he's going to leave North Carolina is if the NFL calls. The NFL's going to call before he starts at North Carolina.
Dude, do you know what the buyout is for his? It's $10 million.
$10 million.
It's $10 million if he leaves. That is a pittance for an NFL team if they really want him. Tom Brady has that sitting in his couch, okay? And it's not like it's $10 million now and it's $9 million next year and it's $8 million the year after that. It's only $10 million if he leaves now, if he leaves before June 1st, 2025. That is the most insane thing that I have seen. That can't even be accurate. Like, that's the leash you gave to Bill Belichick. Like, hey, we just want you to stay for at least 5 months.
So we only got you for the press conference.
Seriously.
That's all we wanted from you.
Seriously, how insane is that? So, look, it would make a mess for North Carolina, but if they've got the money and they get an extra $10 million because some NFL team, probably the Raiders, wants to pay the buyout, North Carolina can recover. They will be fine. Bill Belichick potentially to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Wow.
Very, very interesting.
Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
To answer the question of whether or not Bill wants to be in Las Vegas, let's just take a look at what Bill Belichick has been doing with his life as of late. He's got like a 28-year-old girlfriend, okay? He's going completely young in that regard. He's joining Pat McAfee on a regular basis, smiling, laughing. He's done some analysis work.
Ribbing the Mannings on the Manning cast.
He's having fun with his life right now, and maybe that changes when you go back and you put on the visor and you become an NFL head coach again. But Las Vegas seems like a place that Bill would want to hang out right now.
Yeah. 2 years ago, we'd have been like, Vegas? Bill Belichick? No way. Like, as far as the city fit. But today, it's like, yeah, this is a different Bill Belichick.
I mean, he would – I don't know if having the head coaching job in the NFL is what turns him into a, like, cantankerous old guy. I think he probably just didn't love the media relationship in New England. Because if you go back and you look at the Cleveland version of Bill or the very early New England version of Bill, he was not the same. Like, he wasn't this guy. I don't want to.
Well, in Vegas, not my kind of town.
He's not going to be able to say that. All right, so Prime, you're out. Belichick is in, and he's going to draft your son because that's just how he is.
Cowboys, your move.
Wow. Many reports.
Coach Prime to the Cowboys? ?
It would be a very Jerry Jones thing.
Yeah.
Where are the Cowboys drafting?
I really want to see him. I think I've decided the place I want to see him at more than staying at Colorado is, or maybe second to staying at Colorado is the Jets. I want to see that play out.
Dallas would be the only reason I don't want to see him in Dallas is I think he's a good coach, and I don't want the Dallas Cowboys to be successful ever again.
Yeah.
I developed a deep-seated distrust and distaste for the Dallas Cowboys.
Plus, we just don't like Porter Larson very much, and he's a lifelong Cowboys fan, so it's that reason too.
The man has some odd choices in his life, but so do you. Like your sports,
I do too.
Your sports allegiances are scattered all over the place.
We're kindred spirits that way, except his Cowboys is because his dad was a lifelong Cowboys fan too, so he has more of a one
random.
That makes more sense than most of my choices.
That's far less random. Most of James' choices are just like, I once found a Sports Illustrated in the garbage can that had an Indiana Pacer on the front. So that's my favorite team.
The Jazz are my favorite NBA team. Come on now.
All right.
That's the only one that probably makes sense to people. Yeah. Because I grew up in this state.
All right. For the hat lover in your life.
Are you getting me a hat?
No.
Oh.
I'm not. Although maybe I should. You should go to woodengrail.com right now. Sign up for the newsletter. When you sign up, you could get first access to all the drops, potentially 15% off the new releases. And more importantly, although there's a bunch of outlets that have great hats, the Wooden Grail hats are so incredibly unique. The Flip the Script series, the suede material, the corduroy material, the design on these things, it really does stand out. And for the sports fan who loves a good hat in their life, they've got great gift cards so you don't actually have to choose the team, the look, the color, and potentially disappoint whoever you're giving that gift to because you chose the wrong one. Just go to woodandgrail.com. That's wood, the letter N, grail.com. Tell them OC sent you. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out all the drops, all the releases. They continue to add to the list of licensing agreements they've had, which means, yes, you can get your Aggie hats. You can get even your UVU hats. They've got a great selection of Utes and Cougars apparel, but they continue to add more national brands, Big 12 brands all over the place. Woodandgrail.com. These hats are unbelievable. Go grab one today or grab a gift card and make sure you sign up for the newsletters, subscribe, and you'll get first access on all the drops and discounts at woodandgrail.com. Closing it out with maybe a little crosstalk with Spence Checketts and some topical trivia next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. ESPN 792.1 FM cash kickoff is here. Time for your shot to win $1,000 cash to pay your bills. Text the word HAPPY to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win. That's 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest for $1,000. Text HAPPY to 508-777-1000. Sean O'Connell Show closing things out with a little topical trivia. Utah women's basketball has a great game tonight, tipping off at the Huntsman Center. 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo. That runs from January 17th through January 20th at Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy. If you can tell me where Utah women's basketball is ranked in the top 25 right now. All right? You got at least a 4% chance of getting this right. Where are they ranked? 2 tickets to the Utah Auto Expo at Mountain America Expo Center, January 17th through the 20th. Coming up next is The Drive here on ESPN 700. The host of The Drive is a man named Spence Checketts, and he is here in studio for a little crosstalk. Hey, Spence.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great.
I learned something about you just now that we need to talk about.
Okay.
So there's this random weird thing about a radio station right now where my producer, this young man in there, Porter Larson,
yeah,
Knicks fan.
Okay.
This guy over here, 2 thumbs and likes basketball. Knicks fan.
For obvious reasons.
Because, of course. And I was listening to the program, as I often do, as I'm making my way around town, listening to Sean's show in the midday. And as I was coming in, I thought I heard you say, it was quick, I thought I heard you say you saw a Sports Illustrated in the garbage can with a Pacers, it was probably Reggie Miller, based off of your age. And so that made you a Pacers fan.
No.
But I was mistaken. You were talking about Jersey James, who
Yes.
for some reason, I feel like it's personal because that's just the way I take the world, rolls around in a Reggie Miller jersey often.
Yes.
And it really upsets me. So I thought you were, but you informed me that as a child you were a fan of the New York Knicks.
The Reggie Miller jersey upsets me too because
Good.
I had a deep affection for Patrick Ewing.
Okay.
And the New York Knicks were my team. And I made my uncle, who lived on the East Coast, get me a Patrick Ewing jersey and bring it out to me because back in those days, you couldn't roll through the Pro Image store here in Utah and get yourself a Patrick Ewing jersey.
Nope. Adam Keefe available. But.
Back in my day, kids. So, I loved Patrick Ewing. I did my 3rd grade biography on Patrick Ewing. Patrick Aloysius Ewing, born in Kingston, Jamaica.
Good knowledge.
You know?
There we go.
Love me some Patrick Ewing.
Well,
so,
I never knew this about you. I've known you for years.
Bunch of Knicks guys here. So, yeah.
Well, don't give up on the fandom. I know you were saying now it's kind of like you like the Jazz,
Well,
and maybe you just don't like basketball.
Here's how my twisted sports mind worked in basketball, because I was a Knicks fan, and then we had the glory days of the Jazz, and I jumped on that bandwagon, and then that kind of faded, and I was like, you know what? You know what I like now? I like anyone who went to Georgetown like Patrick Ewing, and so I liked Alonzo Mourning in the Heat, and I had some affection for Allen Iverson. So with basketball, I was a bit transient with my loyalties.
And now nobody from Georgetown is very good anymore.
Yeah, and Patrick Ewing returned to Georgetown to coach, and that was a disaster.
And that didn't go well. But I honestly, I didn't know that about you. So surprised to learn that about your NBA fandom.
Yeah,
you got to be a
something new every day.
big Chris Childs fan, right?
Yeah, of course.
Chris Childs.
The best. Very important question for both of you.
What do you got?
Because I already asked James, so Porter and Spence will take things over here in just a minute. But watching SportsCenter is just poster dunk after poster dunk after poster dunk on the top 10. And I was like, okay, so this sparked the question for me. What is the most embarrassing or emasculating thing that can happen to you in team sports? Has to be a team sport. Because as I told James and our audience, I already know what the most embarrassing thing is. It's happened to me twice.
Yeah.
Are you talking about getting knocked out?
Getting knocked out is the worst.
Yeah.
All right. So in team sports, what's the most emasculating thing? I put a poll together.
Okay.
Poster dunk, the big miss, the big whiff on a strikeout, the nutmeg that either is the goal or leads to the goal, and then the football pancake or decleating hit. Those were my options. Feel free to add anything else if I missed something.
Proud of you for a soccer option, the nutmeg.
The nutmeg is embarrassing.
It is.
And also in hockey, very embarrassing.
Yeah, both.
So,
No, those are good options. Now, for me, I've experienced two. I've experienced being decleated in football.
uh-huh.
But at some point, because there's video of this, I got dunked on violently when I was a junior in high
church
school.
ball. Oh,
it was
okay.
not church ball.
Okay.
We were up. So Marcus Camby played at a school called Hartford Public.
Uh-huh.
And if you grow up in Connecticut, it depends on where you grow up. Grow up in certain areas, you're going to deal with a lot of people that look a lot like you. So if you're in New Canaan, you can beat like the Wiltons or the Greenwiches or the Dariens, the other future hedge fund managers named Tripp that are playing high school basketball.
Yes.
But if you traverse up north, you run into a very different basketball situation. And the FCAC back then encompassed, Fairfield County.
Okay.
Guys that look a lot like me. And then up north, guys that look a little bit more like Marcus Camby.
Yep.
And we went up to play a school called Bridgeport Central. And they had a 6'9" dude who just look, man, I've told Porter this story before. At halftime, we were down 45-10. And the team manager comes up to me. He's like, hey, are they switching on the picks? I'm like, dude, it's 45-10. Switching on the picks doesn't matter. We can't even get a shot off. And in the second half, I'm point guard, so I'm top of the key. And I throw a pass to the corner, bad pass, turnover, and I'm the only one back. And it's a 2-on-1 break. Point guard fakes like he's going to pass it, and then it looks like he's going to go up. So I hedge towards him, and then he throws a bounce pass, and I turn around, and before I realize who it was, I jump up in the air, and I did one of these, put my hand up and then take it down because I knew what was about to happen. His chest hit my chest. I go flying backwards, and he just flushes it.
Uh-huh.
And it was the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me. So getting dunked on like that after experiencing it, and there is video. I should find the video and bring it in.
Okay, so by the way, poster dunk is leading the poll right now. Is the most embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
I push back on that because you only get posterized when you're doing the right thing. You're supposed to go try to defend the dunk.
But the problem, Sean, is I jumped and then I saw who it was, and so I took my I did the worst thing to do.
That one's fine. You did the worst thing.
I did.
But all these highlights are dudes trying to contest the dunk. They're trying to block LeBron James. That's what you're supposed to do.
That's what I always loved about Gobert. Rudy's going to try to block every dunk attempt, and he's going to get got from time to time.
And he did, but the percentage, he's batting .990.
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
He blocks more than he gets posterized.
Yeah.
And so I don't like poster dunk being the one that everyone is like, yeah, that's so embarrassing, because the alternative is what you did. You don't really try, or you only half try.
Mm-hmm.
That's more embarrassing if you only half try. Being pancaked in football and being decleated, although I put them on the same answer, they're two different things, really.
Mm-hmm.
The pancake, I think, is a lot more embarrassing. A couple people weighed in and said it's when you get juked and you fall down.
Uh-huh.
That's the worst. It can happen in football. It can happen in basketball. Porter, I'm sure none of this has ever happened to you as an elite endurance athlete and whatever else kind of athlete.
Porter was a good high school football and basketball player.
I know he was. Yeah. And actually, he's a guy who's like – He still runs with some of like young guys that he still plays hoop with.
Yeah, but he just turned 30. Nobody's impressed. Do it in your 40s, please.
Yeah, over the hill. 30 years old.
But no, Porter's he can dunk.
I'm going to put some rec specs on, and I'm going to go out there.
throw some elbows.
Just to be clear, I usually do the dunk on my birthday to make sure I can still do it.
Okay.
I haven't dunked as a 30-year-old yet.
I bet you can. I got confidence in you.
I can.
Yeah,
but
you're in great shape right now. You'll be able to dunk.
For me, I'm with Spence here. I do think it is for me. It's hoops, and it may be a little specific because I have a similar-ish story to him.
Okay,
it's hard. You get decleated in football. That's obviously similar. The knockout one, I've been there.
Well, team sports though, because the knockout runs away with it.
But it's also nice because you kind of miss it. You miss that,
You do forget.
But I have a similar-ish story to Spence, a guy by the name of Damian Lillard.
Never heard of him.
Spent his college time here in Utah. We were, as he was making the transition to the NBA draft, I was trying to make the transition to play some college hoops. I was up there with Randy and his crew with some off-season basketball right before, I believe, the draft combine. So Damian was primed, ready to go. And same story. I decided to jump. The guy is 6'2".
I was going to say, Dame is he's probably maybe an inch taller than you are.
And I've seen him play, so I knew that he was good. I knew he was going to just run me off the floor. But, I can get up above the rim, so I went and decided to contest him. And Sean, he put me through the hoop. My hand was, I think I got hurt. He put me through the rim and tomahawked it right over top of me. That one for me is the one that stands out. But, I think this is a pretty subjective based on what happened to you.
Yeah, you're probably right. Also, Porter, that is not embarrassing. You're talking about an NBA All-Star got you?
It's not embarrassing. It is a little emasculating.
In the moment. And, I think we all have stories like, I'll tell you, I know you're a big Shane Gillis guy.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I saw the Shane.
Are you going, by the way, when he comes?
Yes. Oh, 100%. Are you going to go?
Yeah. My wife got me Shane Gillis tickets for Christmas.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should do our shows from down there, quite honestly. But the first time, I'd never heard of him. I didn't, listen to his podcast now, but I didn't hear about him until his Netflix special dropped. And I was on a flight. I didn't have anything to. I'm like, I'll check this guy because I love stand-up comedy. And when he said there's a reason why the only good white players in the NBA are the foreign whites, the European whites, because every American white kid saw a black kid dunk in 8th grade and was like, oh, okay, guess I'll set picks for the next 4 years, box out hard as hell. I'm like, oh, I felt so seen like that because I can remember the first time I was in 8th grade and you see what it looks like and you're like, I'll never be able to do that.
Yeah, see, didn't happen here in playing in Sandy, so you're
sure.
Just like, it was a less diverse Sandy back then than it is now.
But you probably had one white kid that could dunk it, back then. And
we had a couple, and it's funny because Utah prep basketball back then was like if you were 6'5", you were playing the 4 or the 5.
Right.
And now those guys are playing the 1, the 2, or the 3 like they should be doing, the 6'5" guys on these basketball teams.
When I moved out here, what I noticed is the top-end players I played against back east were far better than any of the players out here, with the exception Britton Johnson was a senior when I was a senior out here, and he was ridiculous. He could have played with anybody. But what I noticed is everybody knew how to play. Right? Because of church ball. So like you didn't, even if you weren't I've talked to Britton Covey about this, because Britton was a good basketball player in high school, but he was like a church ball bro, basketball player. Everybody knows how to play out here, even if the top end talent isn't necessarily what it is elsewhere. Like in a way, we are a basketball state, even though we're a football starved, sports ecosystem now.
Anyway, what's coming up on the drive? I'm glad we covered that, and you guys gave me your horror stories of being posterized.
It's a good topic. It's a good question. I can't corroborate being knocked out in front of thousands of people, but we could talk about being knocked out at some point.
It's the worst. I hope it never happens to anyone you know. It's the most emasculating, embarrassing, disgusting thing. So I'm very happy to say that I was able to give people that feeling far more times than I actually felt it myself. Yeah. But still, I was not immune from the risks and the negative side of the mixed martial arts world. So I got dropped a couple of times.
Yeah, I'll never experience it. I think my window for combat sports may have passed, but
you never know. We've
got a big NBA game tonight. It's pretty rare where you get like a regular season matchup, but OKC Cavs tonight. So we're going to do some NBA. Rouse is going to hop on. So we'll do some Utah football and basketball right out of the gates. Man, they started so well last night. And then the wheels just fell off. So BYU also got last night. 1 day away from, of course, the college football playoff, and then we got wild card weekend. So we'll cover as much of it as we can over the next 4 hours.
Mark Harlan is going to join us in studio on the show tomorrow at noon. So
Excellent.
Make sure you're here for that. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Sean O'Connell Show out on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.